Chapter 1982. Yang Tian. Ji Tianqing was sure that the man in white that little blue Kun was talking about was definitely Yang Tian. Yin Xing Yin Qi had already died on the first level of the Divine Pagoda. Only Yang Tian was missing. No one knew if he was alive or dead. A few days ago, Ji Tianqing had guessed that Yang Tian might have reached a higher level of the Divine Pagoda. What happened later proved that his guess was right. On the second level of the Divine Pagoda, the codex held by the six-armed golden war god was taken away. On the third level of the Divine Pagoda, the ancient tomb of the three-legged golden crow was cleaned up, and the words on the broken tombstone were also erased. On the fourth level of the Divine Pagoda, Yang Tian slaughtered millions of sea beasts. Almost all the sea beasts were killed, and only little blue Kun managed to survive until now. Ji Tianqing believed that as long as he found Yang Tian, he would be able to solve all the mysteries. He looked at little blue Kun expectantly and quickly asked, "Little guy, why did that man in white kill the sea beasts and destroy the entire deity ocean?" Little blue Kun shook its head and said angrily, "I don't know either, but I heard him say something about the deity realm, the last step. At that time, he was already crazy. I don't understand what he meant, but I guess it might be related to cultivation." Ji Tianqing heard the key information again and asked in disbelief, "Little guy, after the man in white killed the sea beasts, you still saw him and talked to him?" Little blue Kun was speaking more and more fluently, and it was no longer stuttering like before. It nodded and explained, "I saw him. About 1,000 years ago, I was the only one left in the deity ocean. The massacre, more than 300 years ago. I thought that the bad guy had already left. Moreover, I was strong enough, so I wanted to go back to the Eye of the Sea to take a look. Who knew that the bad guy hadn't left yet, and was still cultivating in the Eye of the Sea?" Ji Tianqing asked with interest, "Then he found you. With your strength, you couldn't escape at all, so he caught you, right? But why didn't he kill you?" Little blue Kun nodded and said thoughtfully, "When I was caught by him, I was also very scared. However, he didn't kill me. He even talked to me for a long time. He seemed to be repenting, saying that he was wrong, and that he had gone in the wrong direction, so he didn't hurt me." Ji Tianqing vaguely understood something and muttered to himself, "As I expected, in order to break through to the martial god realm, Yang Tian did his best to climb the Divine Pagoda and enter layer after layer of space. More than 1,800 years ago, the Yin-Yang saints entered the Divine Pagoda and stayed on the first level. It was only 1,300 years ago that Yang Tian came to the fourth layer and slaughtered all the sea beasts. This meant that he had wasted 500 years in the first three levels. He had killed millions of beasts to find a chance to rank up to the martial god realm. However, after 300 years, he still had not broken through to the martial god realm. He was still trapped in the vortex. Only then did he repent and find his conscience. He knew that he had chosen the wrong direction. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing asked little blue Kun, "Little fellow, where is the white-robed man now? Is he still in the Eye of the Sea? Or has he already left?" In his opinion, the ninth-level martial sage Yang Tian could live for at least 5,000 years. In this deity sea, other than Yang Tian, there was only little blue Kun. Thus, Yang Tian could not have died. Either he was still in the vortex or he had already left. Little blue Kun thought for a while before explaining, "He and I stayed in the Eye of the Sea for a few years. He taught me some things. After that, he let me go. He said that he wanted to calm down and make a final attempt. I left the Eye of the Sea and hid at the edge of the deity sea. I was afraid that he would go crazy one day and kill me. About 10 years later, suddenly, there was a huge explosion in the deity sea. The entire deity sea was boiling. It was a terrifying scene. Waves 1,000 feet high came crashing down. I was very scared. I saw that the sky near the Eye of the Sea was covered by golden light. It did not dissipate for half a month. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's eyes lit up. The golden light did not dissipate for half a month? Then he must have successfully broken through to the martial god realm. Little Blue Kun shook its head and said firmly, "No, he is dead." Ji Tianqing was shocked. He asked in disbelief, did he fail to break through to the martial god realm? Little Blue Kun nodded and explained, more than 20 days later, the deity sea calmed down. I returned to the eye of the sea and saw his corpse. His body was smashed and his soul dissipated. He was completely dead. I found his corpse near the eye of the sea and some of his belongings. Originally, he had killed all the sea beasts in the deity sea. I hated him to the core and we had a blood feud. But he had repented and he was already dead. Everything was over. I thought about it for a long time and buried his corpse and belongings in the eye of the sea. Ji Tianqing quickly asked, "Little guy, you did a great job. Take me to see it now." Although the Yin-Yang saints were dead, as long as he found Yang Tian's corpse and belongings, he might be able to unravel the truth. The little Blue Kun opened its big, black eyes wide, gazing at him. It was a little bewildered. "Why should I take you there? We just met." "I don't believe you. The eye of the sea is my home and it is the safest place. If you snatch my territory, won't I have to wander again? If you also go crazy or want to kill me, won't I die miserably?" Little Blue Kun's series of questions left Ji Tianqing speechless. It was obvious that the little Blue Kun was not scheming at all and was very innocent. It only retained its instinctive vigilance and a strong sense of self-protection. The questions it had asked Ji Tianqing were the true thoughts in its heart. Ji Tianqing looked at it sincerely and explained in a serious tone, "Little guy, I just want to leave this place as soon as possible. I don't want to stay and cultivate, and it's impossible for me to snatch your territory. You and I are the only ones left in the deity sea. Without you, I don't know enough about the deity sea and can't enter the eye of the sea. I still need your help, so how can I kill you?" Little Blue Kun thought seriously for a moment before nodding. "Well, what you said makes sense. I'll believe you for now." Seeing that it finally agreed, Ji Tianqing smiled and said with relief, "That's right. Between people. No, between people and Kun, we should treat each other with sincerity." Little Blue Kun listened and thought carefully before nodding in agreement. "Well, that makes sense." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Okay, you can rest assured now. Take me there." Little Blue Kun no longer hesitated. It turned and swam toward the whirlpool not far away. It flapped its wide ice-blue wings and tail and quickly entered the whirlpool like a blue stream of light. Chapter 1983. The bottom of the vortex was pitch black. However, Ji Tianqing could sense that this vortex had gathered all of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the entire divine sea. In the darkness, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth converged to form a gust of wind. He followed Little Blue Kun into the darkness and quickly passed through an invisible wall before entering an alternate dimension. Whoosh! Light returned to his eyes, and he was surrounded by ice-blue seawater that was quietly rippling. Countless strands of five-colored spiritual energy floated in the seawater like strands of seaweed. Ji Tianqing looked around and discovered that this alternate dimension was completely filled with seawater and spiritual energy. This place was magnificent, just like the legendary Crystal Palace. Little Blue Kun swam happily in front of him, and it also became a little excited. Ji Tianqing followed it and flew straight ahead. Not long after, a colorful coral reef appeared in the seawater up ahead. The coral reef with a radius of 100,000 feet was covered in colorful corals and seaweed. Those seaweed and corals were all high-grade spirit medicines that had been nourished by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth for many years. They possessed powerful effects and shone with a brilliant light. There were countless shells scattered around the coral reef, and each of them was as big as a wash basin. These shells had all become sentient beings with extremely tough defenses, and fist-sized pearls and all kinds of precious pearls were hidden in their bodies. Ji Tianqing scanned the area with his divine sense, and he could see many luminous pearls, 5-colored pearls, and white pearls. Little Blue Kun flew to the coral reef and lay down in a huge pit in the center, adopting a leisurely posture. "This is my home," it said to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing nodded with a smile. "This is indeed a treasure trove. Not only is it convenient for cultivation, but it's also very secluded and safe." He was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Little Blue Kun was a little nervous upon hearing this, and it said carefully, "No, no, no. This is not a good place. There's nothing here, and there's no one of our kind to talk to. It's not suitable for you to live here, and you won't like it here." Ji Tianqing smiled and comforted, "Don't worry, I'm not interested in your territory. I'm a human, so I won't live in water, let alone in a pile of coral reefs. You probably don't know, but we humans can build magnificent houses and palaces, sacred and solemn pavilions. Only those are suitable for us to live in." Hearing his words, Little Blue Kun relaxed and quickly changed the topic. "Didn't you want to see the white-robed man's tomb? I'll take you there now." After saying that, it continued to swim north, bringing Ji Tianqing through more than a dozen coral reefs and hills, arriving outside a cave. This cave was located on a small mountain at the bottom of the sea. The mountain rocks were pitch black and ice-cold, and abnormally tough. The cave was winding, but fortunately, it was only 100 feet deep. The Little Blue Kun was too big. Naturally, it couldn't enter. It pointed at the entrance of the cave with its head and said to Ji Tianqing, "That guy's bones and belongings were thrown into the cave by me. I can't go in, so you can go in and see for yourself." Thus, it stood guard outside the cave, and Ji Tianqing entered the cave alone. When he passed through the darkness and reached the depths of the cave, he saw spots of white light on the black rocky ground. He focused his eyes and saw many broken bones scattered on the ground. These broken bones were milky white, like white jade. They were crystal clear, without any impurities. The big ones were the size of a fist, and the small ones were only the size of a date pit. Even after thousands of years, these broken bones had been soaking in the sea, and had not rotted. Without a doubt, these were the bones of a martial saint. Ji Tianqing went all the way into the depths of the cave, picking up hundreds of broken bones along the way. In the deepest part of the cave, there was a pit with a radius of 100 feet. It was shaped like a gourd. He found a large number of broken bones and miscellaneous items in this pit. There were broken armor, dim gems, treasured swords with broken tips, spirit stones, pearls, and gems, etc. In addition, there were a few pieces of a white robe and 2 bracelets made of star silver. Ji Tianqing picked up the 2 deformed and dim bracelets and examined them carefully. This was a pair of dragon and phoenix bracelets, usually worn by couples. The dragon bracelets were engraved with the words "hand in hand" and Yang Tian's signature. The phoenix bracelets were engraved with the words "grow old with you" and also had Yin Qi's signature. Seeing these 2 bracelets, Ji Tianqing was completely sure that the bones here were Yang Tian's. He waved his hand and shot out a golden light, which wrapped around the hundreds of broken bones. As the golden light surged, the hundreds of broken bones were quickly pieced together. An 8-foot-tall skeleton was formed. The 4 limbs, the torso, and the head were all pieced together. Only some parts were missing, such as 2 fingers and toes, and a few ribs in the chest cavity. Ji Tianqing guessed that the bones were destroyed in the explosion, or the Little Blue Kun missed them. But this was not a big deal. Looking at this complete skeleton and comparing it to the Yang Tian statue he had seen before, there was basically no difference. Ji Tianqing checked the armor and the white robe fragments, as well as the gems, swords, and other miscellaneous items. Unfortunately, he could not see anything from these things. No, something is still missing. There must be a clue. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and enveloped the entire cave, searching carefully. After a while, he found a black ring from the messy pile of rubble. Without a doubt, this was Yang Tian's interspatial ring. The ring had been deformed, dim, and had lost its power. Yang Tian was long dead, and the soul imprint on the ring had naturally dissipated, becoming an ownerless item. Ji Tianqing used his divine sense to invade and easily opened the interspatial ring. Sure enough, there were many things stored in the interspatial ring, all of which were Yang Tian's relics. Ji Tianqing went through the items and found hundreds of primordial spirit and tribulation-grade treasures, hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, and hundreds of bottles of pills. There were also miscellaneous cultivation resources and miscellaneous items that had been piled up into a small mountain, and it would take a long time to identify them. Ji Tianqing was not interested in the miscellaneous items, and his attention fell on a pile of jade slips. More than 10,000 jade slips had been stored together, and they were still in good condition as they glowed faintly. I've finally found it. There are more than 10,000 jade slips here, so there should be a lot of things recorded here. Ji Tianqing revealed a gratified smile and began to flip through the jade slips. His divine sense invaded the jade slips, and he quickly read a large amount of information. This information was either recorded in the Shenwu continent's common language or in Yang Tian's and Yin Qi's voices. Ji Tianqing read the information at an extremely fast speed without any hindrance. He flipped through more than 1,000 jade slips in a row, and most of them recorded secret techniques as well as some trivial matters about the Shenwu continent. Among them, there was also information about Yang Tian and Yin Qi's life experiences. From when the two met, to when they rose to fame, to when they took revenge, to when they became husband and wife, and finally to when they traveled the world together. After an hour, Ji Tianqing finally found a clue when he saw more than 2,000 jade slips. Chapter 1984. Ji Tianqing focused on reading the jade slip. All kinds of information flowed into his mind like a tide. There were thousands of notes in the jade slip. Yang Tian's deep voice sounded in Ji Tianqing's mind. 10 days ago, Qi and I entered the secret realm by mistake. We searched the entire secret realm but couldn't find the exit. We could only wait patiently. This morning, Qi was attacked by demonic beasts in the mountains. I killed dozens of demonic beasts, but was surrounded by a group of demonic beasts and human martial artists. These aboriginals were weak. I killed hundreds of them with a snap of my fingers, shocking everyone. However, thousands of people heard the news and surrounded Qi and me. I subdued thousands of martial artists and ordered them to return to their residence. Only then did I find a golden divine tower with an extraordinary aura. It must be a divine weapon. There was another world in the tower. Tens of thousands of martial artists lived in the tower. They knew nothing about the outside world. They were hostile and swore to take revenge. Qi and I worked together to kill thousands of them, shocking the martial artists of the two races. Since we couldn't leave the secret realm, we decided to stay in the tower and explore its secrets. I have a feeling that this godly pagoda is hiding some shocking secrets. It might be able to help us achieve the martial god realm. Information after information flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind. There was no doubt that these were notes written by Yang Tian. It was full of his and Yin Qi's experiences, from when they first entered the Yin-Yang secret realm, discovered the divine tower, and ruled the human and demonic beasts. Ji Tianqing felt that he was getting closer to the truth, so he continued to read the notes. As the Yin-Yang sages ruled the divine tower, the time between each note became longer and longer. The short ones were a month or two, and the long ones were decades apart. Among them, the longest time span was actually over 100 years. That was about 100 years after Yang Tian ruled the two races. At that time, the situation in the tower was stable. The human and demonic beasts had multiplied to more than 70,000 people and were ruled by the Yin-Yang sages. Yang Tian and Yin Qi worked together to explore the Divine Tower. It took them decades to enter the second level of the Divine Tower. On the second floor of the Divine Pagoda, the two of them saw the statue of the six-armed Vajra war god and the Codex. In the Codex, half of the Codex and half of the divine arts were recorded in the ancient demon language. It was called the Life God Sealing Technique. The Yin-Yang saints were overjoyed to have obtained half of the divine art. Both of them saw the light at the end of the tunnel. There was hope for them to break through to the martial god realm. They cultivated in seclusion in the second level and spent 100 years to fully comprehend the first half of the divine arts. After the incident, Yang Tian wrote it down in his notebook. At that time, he was overwhelmed with emotions and lofty ambitions. As I expected, there is indeed a great opportunity in the Divine Pagoda. It allowed me to see the demon race's god and obtain half of a divine art. He had never thought that the ancient demon clan would be so powerful and possess such a profound divine art. This half of the common people's god-sealing technique was just unbelievable and totally weird. My horizons have been broadened. Only now do I know that there are 3,000 great Taoists in the world, and every great Tao can confer divinity. Qi and I have no hope of breaking through to the martial god realm, and we haven't had any opportunities. The heavens are so kind to let us obtain the god-sealing technique. Coincidentally, there are tens of thousands of martial artists on the first floor of the Divine Pagoda who can help us gather faith. From then on, the Yin-Yang saints returned to the first floor of the Divine Pagoda and began to build statues and altars for the tens of thousands of people to worship. The two of them used the common people's god-sealing technique to absorb the faith of the people. As expected, their strength improved by leaps and bounds, and they saw the hope of becoming gods. In the next 200 years, their strength continued to improve. They were as powerful as gods. However, their strength was infinitely close to the martial god realm, but they could not break through. The Yin-Yang saints gradually lost their patience. No matter how hard they thought, they could not find a solution. Therefore, they climbed the Divine Pagoda again and spent another few decades to reach the third floor of the Divine Pagoda. On the third floor, the two of them found a mysterious ancient tomb. They tried everything and went through tens of thousands of attempts and failures, but they still could not open the Golden Crow tomb, let alone obtain the treasures and inheritance in the tomb. The two of them were disheartened and could only return to the first floor of the Divine Pagoda. 100 years later, Yang Tian and Yin Qi had reached the peak, but they still could not break through to the martial god realm. They had also finished cultivating the first half of the divine technique. Without the second half, they could only deduce and guess on their own. The two of them were desperate. After 30 years of torment and hesitation, Yin Qi finally decided to take the risk. She wanted to sacrifice 100,000 people to gather the divine thoughts of the common people and forcefully break through to the martial god realm to become a god. At that time, Yang Tian strongly objected. He did not want her to risk her life, and he did not want to see her slaughter 100,000 people. However, Yin Qi was completely desperate. She stubbornly decided to fight to the death. Before the ceremony, she wrote down a note in a jade slip. I was originally a demon, but why did I have to become a god? Since I have entered this path, there is no turning back. Even if I have sinned and will be punished by heaven, I will bear it alone. It has nothing to do with Yang Tian. As a demon, I should have the highest chance of success in deducing the god-sealing technique. Even if it is risky, I should be the one to try. The final result was just as Ji Tianqing saw. Yin Qi held a grand divine technique ceremony on the first floor of the Divine Pagoda and cast a spell to take the souls and lives of 100,000 people. In the end, the divine thoughts of the common people were successfully condensed. She used the god-sealing technique to forcefully devour the divine thoughts of the common people, intending to become a god. However, she could not withstand the chaotic and violent divine thoughts of the common people and soon exploded and died. Not only was her body shattered, but even her soul collapsed and dissipated. She died on the spot. Yang Tian also did his best to help her refine the divine power of the common people. Unfortunately, the two of them failed and ended up in a miserable state. Yin Qi died, and Yang Tian was seriously injured by the explosion. He was in a coma for several years before waking up. Since then, Yang Tian was the only one left alive on the first floor of the divine pagoda. He was lonely and desperate. He missed his dead wife every day, and his mind was not clear. Yin Qi's death was too big a blow to him. From then on, there was only one belief left in his heart that supported him to live. That was, to break through to the God realm at all costs. Only by breaking through to the God realm could he leave this secret realm. More importantly, he had a chance to use the divine technique to resurrect his dead wife, Yin Qi. 20 years later, his injuries were mostly healed. Therefore, he took his dead wife's belongings and left the first floor of the divine pagoda. He entered the third floor of the divine pagoda and spent 100 years to solve the mystery of the Golden Crow tomb. Not only did he open the passage to the fourth floor, but he also obtained half of the sun-devouring divine technique under the tombstone. Later, there were fewer and fewer notes in the jade slips, and the time span became longer and longer. However, Ji Tianqing understood what happened after that through the short notes. Yang Tian entered the fourth floor of the divine sea and was attacked by countless sea beasts. However, he was a martial saint and was invincible. He easily killed hundreds of sea beasts. He tried to cultivate the sun-devouring divine technique and devoured the flesh and souls of many sea beasts. His strength increased greatly. This gave him hope of breaking through to the God realm. He was encouraged and started a massacre in the divine sea. Chapter 1985. An hour later, Ji Tianqing finished reading all the contents of the jade slip. He already knew the truth of the matter from beginning to end. Yang Tian had slaughtered the deity sea and devoured the power of millions of sea beasts. He went into the eye of the sea and hid in the crystal palace-like coral reef, concentrating on refining his magic power. However, he had only obtained half of the sun-devouring divine technique. During the process of cultivation, 90% of the power of millions of sea beasts had been wasted. Not only was the amount of power he could refine pitifully, but it was also very chaotic. After 300 years, his power had reached its limit, and he had also cultivated half of the divine technique to its limit. Even though he had the combat power of a martial god, he still could not break through to the martial god realm. He was completely desperate. He had been alone for too long, and he had been depressed for hundreds of years. It made him crazy and had nothing to live for. A few years before his death, little blue Kun came to the eye of the sea. Yang Tian found this fish that had escaped the net, but he did not kill it. He did not even hurt little blue Kun. He knew very well that he had killed millions of sea beasts in order to cultivate the sun-devouring divine technique. He was simply a bastard and stupid. Therefore, he was full of guilt and often regretted and blamed himself. After spending a few years with little blue Kun, he finally felt relieved and became indifferent to life and death. He decided to risk his life and use the sun-devouring divine technique to break through to the immortal state. If he succeeded, everything would be fine. He would have a chance to leave the tower and resurrect his dead wife. If he failed, he would follow his dead wife and reunite with her in the netherworld. Later, he drove little blue Kun away. Above the vortex, he burned his life's blood and magic power to break through to the immortal state with the help of the sun-devouring divine technique. There was no doubt that he also failed. He exploded and died on the spot. His body was blown to pieces, and his divine soul collapsed and dissipated. The Yin-Yang saints had died, but the world did not know. Later, little blue Kun returned to the eye of the sea, picked up Yang Tian's remains and threw them into the cave. Everything was over. Sigh. It's all this shitty tower's fault. I don't know who arranged it, but only half of the divine arts are left. Yang Tian and Yin Qi were driven mad and killed by half of the god-sealing art and half of the sun-devouring divine art. Ji Tianqing could only feel pity for the fate of the Yin-Yang saints and let out a faint sigh. After learning the truth and learning about what had happened 800 years ago, his heart felt heavy. However, the past was the past. He quickly put away his sympathetic thoughts and continued to flip through the other jade slips. It wasn't long before he pulled out 2 faint golden jade slips from the mountain of jade slips. These 2 specially made jade slips were reinforced and protected by a saint-level array formation. Even after thousands of years, it would not be destroyed. Ji Tianqing spent 2 hours to remove the sealing array formation on the jade slip. Just as he expected, the 2 jade slips contained half of the life god sealing technique and half of the sun-devouring divine technique. He put the 2 jade slips into his spatial ring and kept them safe. The voice of the burial of heaven immediately sounded in his mind. It's just 2 divine arts of the demon clan. You didn't care for them back then. Besides, you don't need the jade slips to remember the complete incantation, right? Ji Tianqing explained with a smile, people always change. I am Ji Tianqing now, not the Kenshin of the past. Besides, even if I don't care for these 2 divine arts, I can give them to someone else. The burial of heaven didn't say anything more, agreeing with his statement. At this moment, a sharp sigh came from outside the cave. The little blue kun was obviously anxious. It said to Ji Tianqing with special syllables, "Hey, why haven't you come out yet? You don't want to stay here, do you?" Obviously, the little blue kun was still on guard against this problem. Ji Tianqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He waved his hand and sent out a few rays of golden light. He dug a hole in the ground and buried Yang Tian's bones and belongings. Then, he walked out of the cave unhurriedly and came in front of the little blue kun. "You little guy, why are you so guarded? Can't you trust me a little?" As he said this, he even stretched out his finger and knocked on the little blue kun's fat head. Even though he didn't use any strength, the little blue kun instinctively retreated and hid 1,000 feet away in fear. Ji Tianqing immediately laughed loudly with a mocking expression. The little blue kun finally reacted. It knew that he was deliberately teasing it and couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. After hesitating for a moment, it stammered, "That, you've already seen the bones of the white-clothed man, when, are you going to leave?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said in a playful tone, "If I can find the exit, I want to leave now." "So, if you want me to leave early, you have to help me find the exit." The little blue kun was instantly overjoyed and nodded repeatedly, "Okay, then it's a deal. I'll help you find the exit." After promising Ji Tianqing, it quickly became listless. Its eyes were a little depressed as it said, "But I've lived here for thousands of years, and I haven't found any exit?" Ji Tianqing stretched out his hand and knocked on its big head again, hinting, "Even if there's an exit, it must be hidden. You have to think carefully. Where are the special areas or signs?" "Special areas, or signs?" The little blue kun tilted its head and looked at Ji Tianqing. After thinking for a moment, it suddenly thought of something. "I remember now. Not far from my house, there's a 5-colored hill. I'll take you there." Before it could finish speaking, it couldn't wait to lead Ji Tianqing to the 5-colored hill. After a quarter of an hour, when Ji Tianqing followed it and arrived at the 5-colored hill, he found that it was a hill piled up by coral reefs. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and used the 10,000 divine eyes to observe the hill for a long time, but he didn't find any clues. "Little guy, this is just an ordinary coral reef. There's no formation mystery. Think again. Is there any other place that's also very special?" The little blue kun tilted its head. After thinking for a moment, it nodded and said, "Yes, there are dozens of hills like this in the surrounding 10,000 miles." Ji Tianqing was speechless. He couldn't help but knock on its head and remind it, "Hey, fat-head fish, can you use your little head a little? Do colorful coral reefs gathered into a hill mean that it's very special? Other than these hills, is there any other place?" The little blue kun showed an aggrieved expression, as if it was very hurt and wanted to cry. After thinking seriously for a moment, it solemnly shook its head and said, "There's no other place." Ji Tianqing was completely helpless. He could only accept his fate and said with a wry smile, "All right, then we can only investigate those 5-colored hills first. I hope the heavens are watching over us. The exit of this layer of space is really in those 5-colored hills." The little blue kun learned to be smart. It didn't answer or explain. Chapter 1986. It turned out that little blue kun was such a simple fish, it would not lie. Ji Tianqing explored more than a dozen colorful hills and finally found a special hill. This hill was located in the trench and was surrounded by darkness. Only the hill was covered with coral reefs that were emitting colorful lights and emitting powerful energy waves. Ji Tianqing circled the hill a few times and used his divine sense to explore. There was another mystery inside the hill. Little blue kun saw that he was silent and was afraid that he would not believe it, so it explained, "I vaguely remember that the seniors of the sea beasts would often come here to hold sacrificial ceremonies. I was still young then and did not understand what they were doing. Now that I think about it, they seem to be worshipping and praying to a god." Ji Tianqing nodded and told it, "Wait here, I'll go in and take a look." Then, he passed through the layers of coral reefs and entered the colorful hill. He released his divine sense and used the 10,000 divine eyes to carefully explore the inside of the hill. An hour later, he discovered that there was a mysterious formation hidden in the 5-colored hill. The formation was very mysterious, it should be a god-level formation of the demon clan. He racked his brain for a long time before he remembered that this should be the demon clan's supreme god sorcerer formation. Phew! Fortunately, it's only a true-level divine formation. There should be a chance to open it. Ji Tianqing heaved a sigh of relief as a pleased smile appeared on his face. The martial god powerhouses in this world were only virtual gods in the upper realm, or they were called false gods. If one could ascend to the upper realm and become stronger through baptism and cultivation, one could become a real god and be called a true god. A true god-level divine formation was the most common in the upper realm. Therefore, Ji Tianqing was confident that he could open the supreme god sorcerer formation. The biggest problem and obstacle was that his strength was only at the tribulation stage. Without reaching the martial god stage, one could not release divine power. To open the divine formation, one had to use divine power. Normal magical power was useless. Burial of Heaven was also anxious and worried. "Even if you know all kinds of divine arts and remember the way to break this divine formation, it's useless. You only have the strength of the tribulation realm. How can you break the divine array? Isn't that going against the heavens? Only if you have reached the martial god realm will you have enough confidence." Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, then revealed a meaningful smile. He shook his head and said, "That might not be the case. I still have a chance. Although I haven't recovered to the god realm, I can still use the power of stars and lightning. These two powers are of the same origin as god power. What's more, I still have the heaven-mending pearl, a divine artifact. I've nurtured it for so long and helped it recover so much of its strength. It's time for it to do something for me." Then, he formed a seal with both hands and began to cast a spell to break the array. His left hand released the silver star fire, and his right hand released the 4-colored lightning, which he infused into the supreme god-wizard formation. The veins and nodes of the formation were immediately activated, emitting a brilliant 7-colored glow. This scene proved that Ji Tianqing's method was feasible. He was greatly encouraged. Burial of Heaven was also excited. He said expectantly, "I didn't expect this method to work. You're simply too heaven-defying. Breaking the divine formation as a tribulation realm cultivator is definitely an unprecedented miracle. Even you couldn't accomplish such a feat in your previous life." Ji Tianqing cast a spell to break the formation, and said to Burial of Heaven with his divine thoughts, "Since I've been reborn, of course I have to surpass my previous life, create another miracle, and climb to the peak. I can't just stay in the same place, right?" Buried Heaven made a sound of agreement, expressing his deep agreement. Unknowingly, a day had passed. Ji Tianqing used the power of stars and lightning to open the entire Supreme God Wizard formation. He had already broken about 30% of it. Even though he had a lot of power, he was exhausted. He was so tired that his face was pale and he was sweating profusely. After all, what he wanted to break was a real divine formation, something that didn't belong to this world. Miracles weren't so easy to create. Outside the small mountain, little Blue Kun was waiting anxiously again. It was a little nervous. It wanted to urge Ji Tianqing to ask about the progress of the matter. However, it remembered what happened before, so it could only be patient and continue to wait. 2 days passed. Ji Tianqing was still breaking the formation in the small mountain. He had already used up 60% of his power. His strength was greatly weakened, and he looked very tired. Thus, he began to use the power of the heaven-mending orb to help him break the divine formation. With the support of the heaven-mending orb's divine power, the speed of breaking the formation was obviously several times faster. The small mountain emitted 7-colored divine light, illuminating dozens of miles around. Late at night on the 3rd day, the 7-colored divine light emitted by the small mountain suddenly retracted. The divine light condensed into a 7-colored door of light that was 30 feet tall, and appeared in the small mountain. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing had successfully broken the Supreme God Wizard formation and opened the entrance to the 5th level. He hurriedly ended the spell and lay on the ground, exhausted, panting heavily. He had almost used up all of his power. He only had about 20% left. At this moment, his power had fallen to the extreme. It could be said that he was an arrow at the end of its flight. It was as if he had fought a great battle and was heavily injured. Fortunately, his body was special and had a powerful self-healing ability. The heaven-mending orb also released a mysterious white light that entered his body and helped him quickly recover his power. After a short 6 hours, Ji Tianqing's power had recovered to 60%, and his fatigue was greatly reduced. At this moment, little Blue Kun couldn't hold back the doubts and nervousness in its heart. It opened its mouth and asked, "Hey, are you still inside? The small mountain isn't shining anymore. Did something happen? Are you dead? If you're dead, then I'm leaving." Ji Tianqing wanted to circulate his energy to regulate his breathing, but when he heard the last sentence, he was so angry that he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Swoosh! His figure flashed and flew out of the small mountain, appearing in front of little Blue Kun. Thump! Thump! Ji Tianqing reached out his hand like lightning and knocked on its head twice. He scolded in annoyance, "You fat-head fish, can't you be more tactful with your words? Where's the trust we agreed on? Where's the sincerity we agreed on? If I'm really dead, are you not even going to collect my corpse?" Little Blue Kun was knocked and dodged repeatedly. Its big eyes blinked repeatedly, revealing a look of grievance. "You! Why are you hitting me again? I'm just concerned about you. Is there anyone who cares about others like you?" Ji Tianqing rolled his eyes at it. Little Blue Kun thought for a moment and quickly changed the topic. "You're safe and sound. Did you succeed?" "Yes." Ji Tianqing nodded. Little Blue Kun immediately revealed a look of surprise and asked, "That's great. Then you can leave now. Ji Tianqing glanced at it from the corner of his eyes and revealed a malicious smile. He said in a strange tone, "Little guy, it's too lonely for you to stay here alone. It's not good for cultivation. I know the Kun race very well. I can help you grow and become stronger quickly. Come with me to the 6th level of the Divine Pagoda. That's the holy land for cultivation." Chapter 1987. Little Blue Kun had been in contact with Ji Tianqing for a few days and had already established a preliminary trust. Its guard against Ji Tianqing had also been greatly reduced. However, when it heard Ji Tianqing's words, its nerves immediately tensed up. Before Ji Tianqing could finish speaking, it widened its eyes and revealed a look of intense vigilance. You want to trick me, and take me away from here?" As it spoke, it subconsciously retreated. "Hey, this fat-head fish isn't stupid." Ji Tianqing thought so in his heart, but on the surface, he still had to show a gentle and sincere expression and patiently persuade it. "Little fellow, what do you mean by trick? Don't make it sound so unpleasant. I'm doing this for your own good. How lonely would it be for you to stay here alone? There's no one to chat with, and no one to teach you cultivation. This place is barren and too boring. I'll take you to see the wonderful world and help you become a god." Little Blue Kun was stunned when it heard this, and the vigilance in its eyes did not decrease at all. After Ji Tianqing finished speaking, it shook its head repeatedly and said, "After all that talk, you still want to trick me into leaving? Humph, I won't believe you anymore, you bad guy." After saying that, it turned around and ran without hesitation, as fast as a bolt of blue lightning. Seeing that it did not listen to his advice at all, Ji Tianqing was rather helpless and could only use the heaven-capturing dragon claw. Swoosh! A huge golden dragon claw descended from the sky and grabbed Little Blue Kun. Little Blue Kun still wanted to teleport and escape, but the surrounding space was sealed, and it was immediately captured. The golden dragon claw held it tightly, and no matter how it struggled, it could not break free. It resisted desperately, constantly letting out sharp hissing sounds and cursing angrily. "Bad guy! You liar, let go of me! You want to harm me, kill me, and steal my territory. I shouldn't have believed you, humans are all evil bastards." Ji Tianqing wanted to explain to it, but the 7-colored light gate in the small mountain had already begun to flicker and soon closed. Helplessly, he could only throw the Little Blue Kun into the sword world and rush into the small mountain. Shwa! He turned into a streak of golden light and darted into the light gate at lightning speed. In the next instant, the door of light flickered with 7-colored divine light and disappeared into thin air. Tranquility returned to the colorful mountain as if nothing had happened. Ji Tianqing passed through an invisible spatial barrier, left the 4th floor of the Divine Pagoda, and entered the 5th floor. Light returned to his eyes, and his feet landed on the ground. Lowering his head, he saw that the ground beneath his feet was paved with top-grade white jade. It was flat and smooth, shining with a white light. The surroundings were illuminated by the brilliance of the white jade, making it seem very spacious. Ji Tianqing frowned and looked around. Gradually, he could see clearly. This was a spacious hall with a radius of about 3,000 meters. The circular hall was hundreds of meters high, and the dome was filled with stars, shining brightly. This was a style unique to the god realm, where the ceiling would often be decorated with star charts. After all, deities drew on the divine power of the stars to cultivate. Ji Tianqing could see that the thousands of light spots on the dome were not embedded gems. Instead, they were real stars that had been compressed into the size of a fist by a divine art and embedded in the dome. What a grand display, it's comparable to my power back in the day. It seems that the master of this divine pagoda is at least a god king. Ji Tianqing understood and could not help but secretly exclaim in admiration. At this time, Burial of Heaven reminded him, there seems to be an altar in the middle of the hall. Ji Tianqing turned around and looked at the center of the hall. Sure enough, he saw a 100-meter-tall platform. He quickly flew over and observed it closely. The 100-meter-tall altar had a strong demonic style. It was built with 5 colored stones and embedded with tens of thousands of gold and silver gems, as well as other special materials. Ji Tianqing could tell at a glance that all of the materials were divine items, and they were top-notch treasures that could only be found in the higher realms. They definitely did not exist in Shenwu continent. What was even stranger was that the altar was not in the shape of a spire. Instead, it looked like a giant mushroom. The bottom was narrow, and the top was a platform with a radius of 300 meters. On the platform, there were 18 demonic god statues of different shapes arranged in a circle. There was a celestial wolf with a pair of silver wings, an enchanting fox god with a charming temperament, and a one-legged kuei cow that controlled divine lightning. The 18 demonic god statues were all different in appearance. Some were ferocious and tyrannical, while others were mysterious and enchanting. They all faced the center of the platform like 18 loyal guards that were protecting something. Ji Tianqing sized up the 18 demonic god statues before looking at the center of the platform. The center of the platform was empty. There was only a circular formation on the ground that was 30 meters wide. There were thousands of lines on the formation, and hundreds of ancient demonic characters that were divided into tens of thousands of different regions. Ji Tianqing could tell at a glance that this was not an ordinary formation, but rather a divine compass formation. A mere 30 meters wide compass contained an unparalleled mystery that had thousands of transformations and effects. Only a top-notch divine master in the Tao of formations could control a divine compass formation. Kenshin had been the king of gods in the past, and he had been extremely knowledgeable and well-versed in everything. Ji Tian walked to the vicinity of the divine compass formation and observed it attentively. He revealed a deep pondering expression. Relying on his incomplete memories, he tried his best to identify this divine compass formation. Time passed silently. He stood motionless in his original spot, deep in thought. His brain was working at full speed. The thousands of lines and hundreds of ancient characters on the compass constantly flickered in his mind, changing into various formations. Unknowingly, 5 days had passed. Ji Tianqing finally looked relieved, and a smile appeared on his face. So that's how it is. It's actually the legendary Origin Divine formation that can open the Origin Divine gate that leads to the 33 Paradise. Burial of Heaven had remained silent and did not disturb him. At this moment, Buried Heaven was a little shocked to hear that. The Origin Divine formation? Isn't that a regal divine art that only a demonic god king can master? Ji Tianqing nodded. That's right. I'm now certain that the master of this 9 heavens 10 absolutes tower is a demonic god king. Moreover, this god king resides in the 33 Paradise and is one of the strongest demonic powerhouses. This Origin Divine formation is the core of this divine tower. As long as I can decipher this formation, I'll be able to enter and exit the tower as I please. Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, then said with some concern, since it's a regal divine formation, then we have no chance. Unless you recover your past strength and return to the God King realm. Ji Tianqing nodded and smiled bitterly. That's right. The Origin Divine formation of the demonic race is one of their top techniques. It's extremely profound and complex. Even I had to expend some effort to decipher it in the past. I'm too weak right now, so I can't do it. After a pause, he smiled playfully. However, I can't control this divine tower for now, so there's no need to decipher the Origin Divine formation. Chapter 1988. Ji Tianqing's words caused Burial of Heaven to fall into deep thought. It carefully analyzed the situation before replying solemnly, although the logic is not bad, it's very difficult to implement. You only have the strength of a tribulation realm cultivator, yet you want to activate a king-grade formation. That's too absurd. Ji Tianqing smiled confidently and said playfully, I know all of this, but Burial of Heaven, you forgot a secret technique, the Divine Blood Imperial Spirit technique. Burial of Heaven fell silent, and it took a long time before it recovered. It asked in shock, You can't be thinking of using the Divine Blood Imperial Spirit technique to communicate with this Origin God formation, right? Why not? This is a strange move. Ji Tianqing's eyes shone even brighter. Burial of Heaven became even more worried and hurriedly tried to dissuade him. Are you crazy? Why would you risk using such a secret technique? The Divine Blood Imperial Spirit technique is usually used to refine ownerless artifacts, and it has the effect of recognizing a master with a drop of blood. If it succeeds, it will allow the host to communicate with the artifact smoothly and allow them to fuse as quickly as possible. However, this divine pagoda definitely has an owner. If you fail to recognize a master with your blood, you will suffer a backlash from the pagoda and its master. You also said that the master of this pagoda is the Devil King of the 33 heavens. You definitely won't be able to withstand the backlash from the pagoda, and there's a 99% chance that you will lose your life. Ji Tianqing refused to give up and said confidently, Burial of Heaven, have you ever wondered why the pagoda of that Devil King appeared on Shenwu continent? According to historical records, the Yin-Yang realm existed 5,000 years ago. If that Devil King was still alive, would he have left the pagoda outside? Thus, I'm 80% sure that the Devil King has already fallen. Even if he didn't fall, he must have encountered a great calamity and can't even take care of himself. Burial of Heaven considered it for a moment before saying, That's possible, but you have to consider the consequences. If you fail and suffer a backlash, it's very likely that you will lose your life. Ji Tianqing consoled, Don't worry, I have the heaven-mending pearl to protect my soul, so I definitely won't lose my life. Apart from taking a risk, we have no other choice but to be trapped here and wait for death. Therefore, this is the only way. Burial of Heaven also understood his situation and did not say anything more. Then, Ji Tianqing began to cast his spell. He sat cross-legged in the Origin Divine formation, his face solemn as he waved his hands and formed hand seals, sending out bolts of astral fire and lightning. Silver and purple divine power continuously poured into the compass beneath him. His casting speed was not fast. He cast the divine spells in an orderly manner. He was very serious and focused. After all, he was about to activate a king-grade divine array. Even after tens of millions of years, the power of the divine pagoda had been greatly weakened, and the power of the great array had also been weakened. However, it was still not something that ordinary gods could touch. Unknowingly, 3 days had passed. Ji Tianqing continued to cast spells. His spirit and magic power were very empty, and his breath was getting weaker and weaker. Burial of Heaven could no longer sit by and watch, hurriedly fusing with him to provide him with strength. He then used the divine power of the Heaven-Mend Pearl, and the pressure on him instantly lessened. Soon, 10 days had passed. The Origin Divine Formation, which had a radius of 100 feet, now had several hundred lines and ancient characters, all of them shining with silver and purple light. The crucial moment of casting the spell had finally arrived. Ji Tianqing was about to use his essence and divine blood to communicate with the Origin Divine Formation beneath him. Success or failure will depend on this. He softly muttered as he slowly extended his right index finger and forced out a drop of blood from his heart. This was a drop of golden divine blood, radiating a dazzling golden light and imbued with immense power. Drip. The divine blood fell onto the compass, dripping onto the fist-sized diagram at its center. The golden divine blood instantly fused into the formation and vanished. The entire Origin Divine Formation erupted with dazzling golden light, illuminating the surroundings. All the lines, characters, and diagrams of the formation lit up with golden light and quickly connected together. An invisible bloodline connection formed between Ji Tianqing and the origin divine formation. This sort of connection was like that of a father and a brother. As the light of the origin divine formation grew more and more dazzling, this connection of bloodline and energy grew more and more intense. Ji Tianqing was overjoyed and couldn't help but cheer in excitement. My guess was right. It really did work. There was no doubt that his spell had succeeded. As expected, the master of the 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda, the monster race god king of the 33 heavens, had perished. This divine pagoda had become an ownerless object. Now, Ji Tianqing had dripped his blood on it to claim it as his master. Since he was connected to the origin divine formation by blood, he could control the formation with his mind and freely enter and exit the divine pagoda. As for controlling the entire divine pagoda, he was currently too weak, far from enough. But even so, it was enough to make him go mad with excitement. Around an hour later, the golden light dimmed and the origin divine formation calmed down. Ji Tianqing was completely exhausted. He hurriedly sat in the middle of the array and consumed a few pills to quickly recover his magic power. A day and a night passed. Ji Tianqing had recovered 80% of his energy and his mental state had also returned to normal. Full of anticipation and eagerness, he prepared to try activating the divine formation. Burial of Heaven reminded him, "You haven't grasped the origin divine formation yet. You can only activate it. Before you activate the divine array, you have to think it through. If you're transported away by the origin divine gate, where will you appear?" Ji Tianqing chuckled. "Of course I won't be transported to the monster race's 33 heavens." Burial of Heaven choked for a moment before patiently advising, "If you're transported outside the divine pagoda, you'll be in the yin-yang secret realm and unable to leave. If you're transported to the 6th floor, there might be unknown dangers and the formation there is also a king-level divine formation. If you're transported out of the secret realm, how will you enter the secret realm and return to the divine pagoda?" Ji Tianqing replied without hesitation, "If I'm transported out of the secret realm, I'll just come back and think of another way. If I'm transported out of the secret realm, I'll just go back home. I'll refine this divine pagoda after I break through to the martial god realm. I don't believe that anyone understands this divine pagoda better than I do. Could it be that there's someone who can snatch the divine pagoda before me?" Burial of Heaven saw that he had already thought this through, so he didn't try to persuade him otherwise. Ji Tianqing didn't want to stay in this deathly stillness any longer, so he hurriedly activated the origin divine formation. Whoosh! The origin divine formation lit up with dazzling golden light and began to spin. The lines and diagrams on the ground immediately transformed into thousands of profound seals. A moment later, the formation released a dense white light that condensed into an origin divine gate more than 3 meters tall. Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with anticipation as he stepped into the gate. Whoosh! In a flash of white light, he vanished. Chapter 1989. Swoosh! A flash of white light cut through the darkness. When the white light faded, a handsome young man in a white robe appeared in the darkness. Without a doubt, he was Ji Tianqing. Something doesn't seem right. When Ji Tianqing landed on the ground, he realized that something was amiss when he saw the pitch-black surroundings. Beneath his feet were icy black stone slabs, and around him was a plaza shrouded in darkness. Not far in front of him was an enormous altar. It was 60 meters tall and spanned a radius of 3,000 meters. It was a majestic sight to behold. At the top of the altar stood a towering statue of the 6-armed Vajra war god. Around the altar were over 1,000 monster statues of various shapes and sizes. They were all in prostration and worship at the Vajra war god on the altar. Such a familiar scene made Ji Tianqing realize it immediately. He'd been transported to the second level of the divine pagoda. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but roll his eyes with a wry smile. He'd considered several possibilities after entering the exalted divine sect. Perhaps he'd been transported to a secret realm, or out of it. Or perhaps he'd been transported to a completely foreign place. But he'd never imagined that the exalted divine sect would send him back to the second level. Wasn't this a trap? However, Ji Tianqing didn't have time to feel depressed. He could clearly see that in the darkness ahead, there were dozens of scarlet and dark purple eyes staring at him in unison. 25 pairs of eyes brimming with killing intent were scattered around the altar. They were 25 strange-looking black-robed men who didn't look human. Black smoke swirled around them and they exuded a dangerous aura. Ji Tianqing was very sensitive to their auras and immediately recognized them. The 25 black-robed men were all experts of the Devil Clan, and they all had the strength of the Crossing Calamity Realm. Damn it! They're demons from Dark North Mountain. Ji Xioluo's speed is so fast that he's already reached the second level? Ji Tianqing immediately realized that these demonic experts were Demon Saint Ji Xioluo's subordinates. When he thought of Ji Xioluo, he subconsciously raised his head and looked at the top of the altar. Sure enough, there was a pitch-black beast standing at the top of the altar. The giant beast was covered in black scales and had sharp claws and wings. It also had a hooked tail, just like the legendary Azura. When Ji Tianqing looked at it, it was also looking down at Ji Tianqing. Its scarlet eyes flashed with a cruel and bloodthirsty sneer. Human race? Ji Xioluo's sharp and narrow mouth moved slightly as he spoke in a low and cold voice. It looked at Ji Tianqing with a mocking gaze and asked in broken continent common language, "Kid, tell this saint your identity and origin, and how did you enter this divine pagoda? Tell me the truth and I'll give you a quick death." Ji Tianqing looked at it with contempt and sneered, "Back then, Patriarch Xuepao was just as arrogant as you. Later, I crippled him. I guess he's living a life worse than death now. If you're tired of living, I'll fulfill your wish." Suddenly hearing these words, Jixi Yoluo's pupils constricted, and a fierce cold light flashed through them. Its body trembled and it quickly reacted. "You fought with Patriarch Xuepao? You destroyed his Dharma body? You're from the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Huanglong Daoist?" "No. Ji Tianqing." "Yes. You're Ji Tianqing. Since the day the ancestor demon god returned to the North Underworld Mountain, Ji Tianqing had been the greatest enemy of the demonic race. As the demon saint of the North Underworld Mountain, even if it had not seen Ji Tianqing with its own eyes, it knew Ji Tianqing's appearance. Ji Xioluo stared at Ji Tianqing and compared him with the portrait he had seen before. It immediately confirmed Ji Tianqing's identity. At first, it was startled, then it was filled with excitement, revealing a look of intense excitement. "Kakik. I didn't expect that a damned human worm like you would also enter the divine pagoda. I originally planned to go to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains to kill you after exploring the arcane realm. I didn't expect to meet you here. That's great, the two matters can be settled at once." Ji Xioluo grinned coldly, and a cold murderous aura surged from his body. He flapped a pair of wide black azura wings and released endless demonic fog, covering a radius of 10 miles to prevent Ji Tianqing from escaping. Then, he waved his sharp claws and gave orders to the demonic powerhouses around the altar. "Let's go together and capture him alive. I want to capture him alive and bring him back to the North Underworld Mountain to receive my reward." The 25 demonic powerhouses immediately accepted the order and took out their magic treasures and weapons. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Everyone attacked Ji Tianqing from all directions, using their secret techniques and secret techniques. Purple, red, and black magic shadows, as well as all kinds of secret magic of the Devil Clan, poured down from the sky. The area within a radius of 10 miles was illuminated. The ground was dazzling purple, as if it was stained with blood. Ji Tianqing was in the center of the storm. He was surrounded by 25 powerhouses in the tribulation stage, but he was not afraid. It just so happens that I haven't had a chance to test my skills before. Since I met you, it's your destiny to die. I'll use you to test my skills. He sneered. A black light flashed in his right hand, and the sword of burial of heaven appeared out of thin air. Swing the sword. The sword of burial of heaven swung and slashed out 1,000-foot-long silver light. Like a crescent moon, it swept across the demonic powerhouses. Bang, bang, bang. The sky was full of magic shadows, all kinds of demonic light, blood light, and black fog. They were all defeated by the silver sword light and collapsed on the spot. More than 10 demonic powerhouses were swept by the sword light and flew back screaming. Only a few scattered saber lights and sword shadows landed on Ji Tianqing's body, producing a series of muffled sounds. However, Ji Tianqing was safe and sound. His physical body was too strong, and his defense was comparable to that of a martial sage. Ordinary people could not hurt him. The joint attack formation of the demonic powerhouses was broken by Ji Tianqing in one move. Among them, a dozen or so demons were either lightly or heavily injured. At the top of the altar, Ji Xiaolua was watching the battle with a cold smile on his face. When he suddenly saw this scene, the cold smile on his face instantly froze. His eyes widened, revealing an extremely shocked expression. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have dared to believe that Ji Tianqing's strength was actually so strong. He was comparable to a martial sage powerhouse and was evenly matched with him. This is impossible. Back then, Patriarch Xuepao said that he was injured by Huanglong Daoist. Could it be that this old man deliberately hid the truth in order not to lose face? This thought flashed through his mind, and Ji Xiaolua suddenly understood something. Just as he was in a daze, Ji Tianqing had already used his unique skill and started to kill. Heavenly Dragon Palm. 7 Stars Sword. He struck out a golden dragon with his left palm and blasted toward the demonic powerhouses on the left. He waved the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and stabbed out 49-star divine fire, killing more than 10 demons on the right. Those demonic powerhouses were all the elites of the North Underworld Mountain. They only had the strength of the second or third layer of the tribulation stage. How could they resist Ji Tianqing's divine power? Chapter 1990. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 demon clan experts were sent flying by Ji Tianqing. All of them were severely injured. They were either covered in blood or bleeding from their 7 orifices. It was proven that although Ji Tianqing was only at stage 8 of the Crossing Calamity Realm, his combat strength was comparable to a martial sage. Moreover, the secret skills that he had mastered were difficult for ordinary martial sages to deal with. Ji Xiaolua finally came to his senses. He was shocked and angry. He no longer dared to underestimate Su Mo. He roared and flapped his black wings. He turned into a black ray of light and rushed toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing. You damned thief, I'm going to tear you to shreds. As it roared, it waved its pair of sharp claws and shot out sharp blades of black light that covered the sky towards Ji Tianqing like a hurricane. Swoosh! 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 The black light blades cut the night sky within 1,000 feet. Dozens of space cracks appeared. The power of the Azura demon sage's attack was extraordinary. Ji Tianqing was in the mood to kill. When he saw Ji Xiaolua rushing toward him, he did not dodge. Instead, he took the initiative to meet him. You have just become a martial sage. How dare you call yourself a martial sage? Do you have any shame? Golden rock dance, sky-splitting sword. Ji Tianqing shouted angrily. A pair of golden wings appeared on his back. It was his battle robe that had transformed into a pair of wings. He had not used this secret skill for a long time. Now that the skill had changed, its power was even greater than before. The golden wings flapped and hundreds of golden light blades slashed at the black light blades in the sky. There were muffled sounds. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands. His essence, chi, and spirit merged and slashed out a giant silver sword that was 1,000 feet long. The giant sword was formed by the power of stars. It was surrounded by silver divine fire and was extremely powerful. Swoosh! In 1/5 of an instant, the giant sword cut through the sky and hit Ji Xiaolua. Boom! With a loud bang, Ji Xiaolua was sent flying back by the giant sword and landed heavily on the wasteland outside the square. The ground was smashed into a deep pit, and the surrounding area was split open, causing sand and stones to fly into the air. Ji Tianqing had thought that his sword would cut Ji Xiaolua in half. Even if he didn't die, he would be severely injured. However, he had underestimated Ji Xiaolua's strength, especially his defense. When the giant sword struck Ji Xiaolua, it folded its black wings to protect itself. The enormous sword condensed from the star divine flames cut open a wound on its wings, revealing dark purple demonic bones. A large amount of demonic blood flowed out. However, its wings were not severed, and its injuries were not serious. After falling to the ground, it rolled a few times and got up. It charged at Ji Tianqing even more furiously, but its combat power was not weakened by much. Little bastard, I'll show you my Azura ultimate skill. Azura Phantom. Ji Xiaolua was completely enraged. He no longer held back and used his trump card. He no longer released any spells. Instead, he pressed his body in front of Ji Tianqing and engaged in close combat. Swoosh! 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 In the blink of an eye, his figure flashed 18 times around Ji Tianqing, leaving behind 18 phantoms. Each phantom had a different attacking posture. They stretched out their sharp claws, either stabbing or clawing at Ji Tianqing's vital points. Bang! 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 A series of muffled sounds echoed in the night sky. Although Ji Tianqing tried his best to dodge, he was still hit 9 times. His body trembled as he was sent flying 5 kilometers away. When he landed on the ground, his white robe was in tatters, and there were 9 bloody marks on his pale golden skin. Fortunately, his physical body had been tempered hundreds of times and was comparable to a martial sage. Otherwise, he would have been torn to pieces by Ji Xiaolua. The Azura demon clan is indeed extraordinary. Ji Tianqing put away his disdainful expression and muttered in a gloomy tone. He knew very well that the Azura Dao of the demon clan was best at close combat. The demon race powerhouses that cultivated the Azura Dao had an inconceivable level of physical defense, strength, reaction speed, and explosive power. In all the worlds, only the Dragon clan could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Azura Dao of the demon clan. Legend had it that there were demon clan elites who did not cultivate the dermic powers of heaven and earth. They only relied on their physical bodies to become saints. According to Ji Tianqing's knowledge, only the Dragon clan and the Azura demon clan could do that. Ji Xiaolua's attack succeeded. He grinned coldly and said, "Haha. I said just now that I'll tear you to pieces. You won't be able to escape." With that, he turned into a ray of black light again and charged at Ji Tianqing. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Another 18 Azura phantoms appeared and surrounded Ji Tianqing. They attacked Ji Tianqing's vital points from all angles in the most violent manner. Ji Tianqing no longer defended passively. He used his secret technique without hesitation. Celestial Dragon Body. Roar. With a dragon's roar, Ji Tianqing's body emitted a golden light that shot into the sky. He instantly turned into a 30-foot-tall giant. Dazzling golden light swirled around his body like a layer of golden armor. He was like a god of war in golden armor. He exuded a domineering aura that looked down on the world. Whether it was defense, strength, or speed, they all increased by several times. Without hesitation, he swung his fists and raised his feet. He punched out 12 times in an instant and kicked out 16 times. Bam, 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 bam. The golden light from his fists and feet collided with the Azura phantoms. There was a deafening explosion. Suddenly, the Azura phantoms collapsed and turned into a destructive shockwave that spread in all directions. The shockwave mixed with the golden light and the black light swept across the entire square. Nearly 1,000 demon statues in the square were immediately destroyed by the shockwave. They turned into dust that covered the sky and scattered in the night sky. Only the altar and the six-armed Vajra war god statue on top of the altar were still intact. However, Ji Tianqing and Ji Xiaolua were engaged in a fierce battle. They did not notice this. Neither of them used any spells. They relied solely on their physical strength and martial arts to launch the fiercest and most violent battle. Every punch and kick, every move would collide fiercely. They did not give in at all. This was the most bloody battle, but also the most dangerous one. The slightest mistake would result in serious injuries or even the destruction of one's physical body. Bam! Bam! Loud noises rang out continuously. Violent shockwaves kept exploding in the night sky. In just a short span of 100 breaths, the two of them had exchanged more than 1,000 moves. They had suffered serious injuries all over their bodies. Ji Tianqing's chest, back, limbs, and head were all left with streaks of blood that kept oozing out. The clothes and hair on his body had been destroyed long ago. Ji Xiaolua was in an even more miserable state. More than a dozen of the bones in his wings were broken and his barbed tail was broken. The bones in his chest were all shattered and deeply caved in. Purple demonic blood flowed out of its mouth and nose. The more Ji Xiaolua fought, the more frightened he became. His expression also became uglier. Close combat was his forte. It was also the ultimate skill he was proud of and the source of his confidence. However, a human who was several times weaker than the Devil Clan was actually fighting it in close combat with the Devil Clan. More importantly, this human's strength, defense, and martial arts were superior to his. He was beaten to a pulp. Chapter 1991. Damn bastard! How can his defense and strength be so strong? Could he have broken through to the martial sage realm and cultivated the dragon tribe's secret killing technique? Ji Xiaolua retreated to the east side of the altar. While he was panting, he pondered in shock. He could tell that Ji Tianqing was using the dragon tribe's combat technique. Every move was accompanied by the sound of a dragon's roar. Golden light flashed and the shadow of a divine dragon appeared. Ji Xiaolua thought to himself, could this kid be from the dragon tribe? Only the dragon tribe would have such a strong physical body and such a marvelous combat technique. But the demon god never mentioned that this kid is from the dragon tribe. Could he have hidden it too well? Thinking of this, Ji Xiaolua decided that after returning to the North Underworld Mountain, he would definitely report this top-secret information to the ancestral devil god. At that moment, Ji Tianqing flew out from the darkness and looked down at Ji Xiaolua from above. He let out a scornful laugh. Hee, what bullshit Azura demon god is he? He is just a dog and a chicken that can't withstand a single blow. Ji Xiaolua, if you have any other trump cards, use them now. Otherwise, you won't have a chance. Ji Tianqing's body shone with a golden light and the shadow of a dragon appeared behind him. Roar! The 100-zhangtal golden dragon phantom let out a dragon roar that could pierce through gold and shatter stone. Ji Tianqing also used all his strength and slashed at Ji Xiaolua with the Burial of Heaven sword. Heavenly Dragon Slash. At that moment, Su Mo's strength exploded and gathered on the Burial of Heaven sword. The Burial of Heaven sword shone with a sacred golden light and formed a giant sword that was 100 feet long. With the power to destroy everything, it slashed at Ji Xiaolua's head. The golden light cut through the darkness and tore the night sky apart. Before the giant sword arrived, the unparalleled suppressive force suppressed Ji Xiaolua until his body trembled and his feet sank into the ground. Ji Xiaolua looked up at the giant sword. His pupils constricted and his expression was extremely solemn. It knew very well that if it was hit by this sword, even if it didn't die, it would be heavily injured. At the critical moment, he had no choice but to use a forbidden secret technique at all costs. Burning Blood Divinity, Azura Fist of the Great Demonic God. As it let out a furious roar, its entire body ignited with soaring blood flames. It ignited its own blood essence, causing its power to increase by more than 3 times. The price of using this secret technique was the loss of 50 years of cultivation. Die. Ji Xiaolua let out a furious roar and brandished a pair of cold, pitch-black fists, recklessly smashing towards Ji Tianqing. A long blood-red tail of flame trailed behind it. Like a meteor streaking across the night sky, it collided with the giant sword. Boom! A deafening explosion rang out, echoing for hundreds of miles. The giant golden sword instantly crumbled, turning into millions of golden fragments that scattered in all directions. Ji Tianqing was pushed back by the horrifying power. He was sent tumbling backward and fell into the wasteland 20 miles away. Ji Xiaolua's wrists were cut off on the spot by the giant sword. His 2 sharp claws exploded into countless black pieces that scattered in the night sky. Several cracks appeared on the black shell on his chest. Purple demonic blood spurted out. He was heavily injured and in great pain. His combat power was also weakened. The extremely violent impact blasted out a deep crater with a radius of dozens of miles on the ground. Ji Xiaolua was covered in blood. He was sent flying dozens of miles away by the shockwave. Sand, dust, and gravel covered the entire wasteland. The violent impact surged into the darkness at the edge of the wilderness and immediately dissipated. After a full 100 breaths, the earth-shaking commotion gradually stopped. At the same time, the heavily injured Ji Xiaolua took the opportunity to burrow into the altar in the middle of the wilderness. Whoosh! In a flash, he escaped from the 2nd floor of the divine pagoda and disappeared without a trace. A moment later, Ji Tianqing turned into a streak of golden light. He flew out of the darkness and landed on the altar. During this period of time, he went to take care of a dozen or so surviving demons. Of the 20 or so demon experts, a dozen or so had been killed by the shockwaves of the battle. They had long been reduced to ashes. The remaining dozen or so had fled with serious injuries, but they did not escape Ji Tianqing's slaughter. At this point, the 20 or so demon experts were all dead. Only Ji Xiaolua was left. He had fled without a trace. Ji Tianqing had also returned to his original appearance. He was 7 feet tall, wore a white robe, and held the sword of burial of heaven. His aura was valiant and domineering. It was a pity that the long hair that had been destroyed had yet to grow back, making him look a little battered. He was only slightly injured. After circulating his energy and adjusting his breathing for a moment, he was already fine. Standing on the altar, he bent down to look at the drop of demon blood on the ground. He could not help but frown and mutter, "That damn Ji Xiaolua, he actually escaped. No. I can't give him a chance to breathe. I have to kill him completely while he's heavily injured." Ji Tianqing was determined to kill him. He had decided to eliminate the source of trouble. However, he was a little hesitant. He could not determine where Ji Xiaolua had escaped to. Did he go to the third floor of the Divine Pagoda? Or did he return to the first floor of the Divine Pagoda? When I first came here, Ji Xiaolua and those demons were around the altar. They seemed to be breaking the formation. I wonder if Ji Xiaolua has broken the formation? Although Ji Tianqing thought so, he was sure that Ji Xiaolua had most likely failed to break the formation. Even if he had escaped, he must have fled back to the first floor of the Divine Pagoda. Thus, Ji Tianqing waved his palm and released a golden light. He cast a spell to activate the formation. Swoosh! With a flash of light, Ji Tianqing passed through the formation and left the second floor of the Divine Pagoda. The next moment, he appeared on the first floor of the Divine Pagoda, standing in the square. Behind him were the statues of the two sages of Yin and Yang. Darkness surrounded him. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and spread it around, searching for Ji Xiaolua's traces. However, there were no traces of blood on the ground. There was also no trace of demonic qi in the air. Ji Tianqing was unwilling to give up. He quickly left the square and began a careful search of the surrounding buildings. He spent 4 hours carefully inspecting the thousands of houses and palaces twice. In the end, he still could not find any trace of Ji Xiaolua. The facts proved that Ji Xiaolua had not returned to the first floor of the Divine Pagoda. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned. His expression darkened as he pondered. Since he's not on the first floor, it's very likely that he escaped to the third floor. That damn Ji Xiaolua. I didn't expect him to have broken the formation. Of course, there's another possibility. Ji Xiaolua escaped from the Divine Pagoda and is hiding in the mystic realm. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing cast a spell to activate the formation and left the first floor of the Divine Pagoda. Swoosh! With a flash of light, he returned to the second floor. His surroundings had not changed. Both the altar and the wasteland were the same as before. Swoosh! With another flash of light, Ji Tianqing passed through the formation and left the second floor of the Divine Pagoda. The next moment, he appeared on the third floor of the Divine Pagoda. He was also surrounded by a wasteland shrouded in endless darkness. Not far ahead was the mysterious Golden Crow's tomb. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and spread it around, searching for Ji Xiaolua's traces and flying towards the Golden Crow's tomb. Chapter 1992. Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 balls of dazzling 5-colored brilliance flew in front of him in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianqing took a closer look and saw a few figures wrapped in the 2 balls of light. They were not demons, but ordinary human powerhouses. There were a total of 4 people, and all of them had the strength of a Tribulation Realm cultivator. There are other people who have entered the tower? Ji Tianqing frowned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. How can those Tribulation Realm cultivators break the sacred array at the entrance of the mystic realm? Moreover, they have entered the 3rd level of the tower? Only the people of the Broken Sky Alliance can do that. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianqing determined the other party's identity. Sure enough, the 4 Tribulation Realm powerhouses were all wearing purple robes with the emblem of the Broken Sky Alliance. They were the elite powerhouses of the Broken Sky Alliance. They took out their weapons and Dharma treasures and surrounded Ji Tianqing, emitting a strong sense of hostility. Ji Tianqing knew them and had fought with them before. The 4 purple-robed powerhouses also hated Ji Tianqing very much, glaring angrily at him. Ji Tianqing glanced at the 4 of them and shouted in a dignified tone, "How can trash like you enter the tower? How dare you make an enemy of me? Where is Qin Haishan? Ask him to come and see me. He's got guts, huh?" If Ji Tianqing had shouted like this a few days ago, the 4 powerhouses would have been afraid and fearful. But now, not only did they not have the slightest fear, they even sneered contemptuously. Ha ha ha. Kid, you still dare to be so arrogant, you really don't know what's good for you. Looks like you haven't seen the situation clearly. Are you still trying to intimidate others with your connections? You're really shameless. How dare you lie that you're friends with our alliance leader? Are you worthy? The four powerhouses had been humiliated before, and their hearts were filled with resentment and hatred. Now that he had someone backing him up, he naturally wanted to vent his anger and ridicule Ji Tianqing to his heart's content. Ji Tianqing saw through the clues and his eyes became colder. He asked, "You were so humble before, but now you are so arrogant. It seems like you found someone to back you up." As his voice fell, a confident and arrogant voice came from the dark sky in front of him. "That's right. You're not that stupid after all. You finally understand." Hearing this voice, Ji Tianqing looked up at the night sky. He saw a middle-aged man in a gray-white robe leisurely walking over. This person was 7 feet tall and had a pale face. His long hair was tied into a ponytail, and he had a white beard on his chin. His face was thin and his eyes were malicious. His entire body was emitting a powerful aura. Ji Tianqing immediately judged that the man's strength had reached the martial sage realm. Behind the middle-aged man were a few elite experts of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance. Qin Haishan was among them. The middle-aged man's attitude was arrogant, and Qin Haishan and the few purple-robed powerhouses were very respectful to him. Ji Tianqing immediately guessed at the middle-aged man's status was definitely higher than Qin Haishan's. In the Broken Sky Alliance, only the patrol envoy and the elders have a higher status than the branch leader. Usually, the elders do not show themselves easily. Only the patrol envoys are active outside. It seems like this guy is most likely the patrol envoy of the Broken Sky Alliance. In the blink of an eye, Tian Shang, Qin Haishan, and the rest arrived in front of Ji Tianqing. The 12 purple-robed powerhouses spread out and surrounded Ji Tianqing. Tian Shang and Qin Haishan stood in the night sky, 1,000 feet away from Ji Tianqing. They looked at each other coldly. Ji Tianqing glanced at Tian Shang and said in a mocking tone, "No wonder these people are so arrogant and dare to challenge me. It turns out that they have someone backing them up. But I don't know if this new backer is qualified enough." Hearing this, Qin Haishan was enraged. His eyes flashed with shame and anger. He glared at Ji Tianqing and scolded, "Kid, you made up a lie to deceive me and made me think that you were friends with our alliance leader. I'm not afraid of you. I'm just giving you some leeway out of respect for our alliance leader. Now that your lie has been exposed, let's see what other tricks you can play." Ji Tianqing smiled playfully and nodded, "You're right. I did lie to you. I'm not friends with Wu Duantian. Because Wu Duantian is not qualified to be my friend." He was telling the truth. However, when Tian Shang, Qin Haishan, and the rest heard this, they were instantly filled with anger. Everyone glared at him. Even Tian Shang, who was the most shrewd, glared at him with a sharp gaze. His entire body was filled with a thick murderous intent. "Kid! You're so arrogant that you're ignorant. Other than the 3 martial gods, no one else dared to say such a thing. And you dare to insult our alliance leader. No matter what your background is, you'll have to pay the price today." As he spoke, Tian Shang took 2 steps forward. An invisible aura burst out from his body and charged toward Ji Tianqing like a furious dragon. An invisible pressure swept over like a stormy sea in a violent hurricane, fiercely attacking Ji Tianqing. However, Ji Tianqing did not move at all. His clothes and hair did not even flutter. Tian Shang's aura was ineffective against him. Ji Tianqing smirked and said to Tian Shang, "You want me to pay the price? Are you qualified?" Tian Shang exuded a strong sense of confidence. With a powerful aura, he shouted, "I, Tian Shang, am more than enough to kill you." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his palms and shot out a 5-colored brilliance. 2 mountain-sized palm shadows were formed and slammed toward Ji Tianqing. Heaven-suppressing seal. The 200 feet tall palm shadows were like the palms of a deity. They exploded with power that could suppress everything. Ji Tianqing was fearless. With his left hand behind his back, he raised his right hand and extended his index finger and middle finger. Sky-piercing finger. Blinding golden light burst out from his 2 fingers. They were like 2 giant swords that pierced toward the 2 palm shadows. Boom! Crack! The palm shadows and the giant swords collided. There was a deafening sound that sounded like a thunderclap. The 2 attacks exploded at the same time. They turned into dense light fragments that scattered in all directions. Violent 5-colored air waves swept across the entire wasteland. Other than Qin Haishan, who could stay and watch the battle, the other 12 purple-robed powerhouses all retreated far away to avoid being injured by the aftershocks of the battle. Ji Tianqing and Heavenly Slayer exchanged a move, and they were actually evenly matched, unable to distinguish the upper hand. Tian Shang's expression changed. His pupils constricted. He said in a cold voice, "You do have some ability. No wonder you're so arrogant." Ji Tianqing looked at him with disdain and said, "If you're afraid, kneel down and apologize to me. I can spare your life." Tian Shang was so angry that his face turned black. His expression became ferocious. Killing intent surged from his body. "Little bastard, you're courting death." Chapter 1993. Hearing Tian Shang's words, Ji Tianqing immediately raised his eyebrows and revealed a mocking expression. "Oh? So courageous? Then you'll have to change your name. You can write it backwards from now on. However, you're already a dead man, so your name isn't important anymore." As he spoke, Ji Tianqing raised his fists and punched at Heaven Slayer. Star-shattering fist. Silver Star Divine Fire burst out of his fists, forming 2 massive fist auras that streaked across the night sky like meteors. Heaven Slayer didn't dare to be careless. He immediately counterattacked. Both of his hands formed hand seals and waved rapidly, forming a profound seal. Indefinite Divine Spear. He roared angrily and pointed his sword fingers 3 times, shooting out 6 dark golden beams of light towards Ji Tianqing. Each dark golden light formed a golden spear shadow that was hundreds of feet long. They stabbed toward Ji Tianqing's vital points. The shadow of the spear was constantly changing, making it hard for one to grasp and dodge. The biggest characteristic of Heaven Slayer's secret technique was that it was unpredictable and impossible to guard against. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense to determine the trajectory of the spear shadows. However, he couldn't do it at all. He immediately realized the essence of this secret technique. Thus, he decisively unfolded his battle robe. Swoosh! Golden light flashed behind him, and a pair of wide golden wings appeared. Golden rock wings. The golden wings instantly closed and wrapped around him, protecting him. The 6 spear shadows hit the golden wings one after another. Boom! 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 Instantly, the spear shadows shattered into countless golden fragments that scattered in the night sky. The golden rock wings were undamaged. Ji Tianqing wasn't hurt. However, the incomparably powerful force of impact sent him flying 1,000 meters away. Heaven Slayer didn't let him go. He roared and chased after him. Aurora instant kill. He roared angrily and formed hand seals with both hands. He activated 100% of his power and formed a blazing white sword that was hundreds of feet long. Kill! Following his shout, the blazing white sword of light that was hundreds of meters long pierced towards Ji Tianqing with a divine might that seemed capable of piercing through everything. At the same time, Ji Tianqing had just retracted his golden rock wings. Seeing the blazing white light sword coming at him, he furrowed his brows and raised his left palm without hesitation, using his trump card. God-slaying spear. Golden divine flames gushed out of his left palm and condensed into a golden divine spear that was 100 feet long. The golden divine spear stabbed toward the sword of light. In the blink of an eye, the god-slaying spear and the blazing white light sword collided, causing an earth-shattering explosion. Boom! In that instant, the white light shattered and rose into the air like a mushroom cloud. The wasteland within a radius of a few dozen kilometers was instantly illuminated by the white light. A violent shockwave swept across the entire wasteland. Even Qin Haishan was unable to withstand it and was blasted back 1,000 feet. The weaker purple-robed experts were sent flying, each of them spitting out blood. A few of those who were closer to the scene were seriously injured and covered in blood. Ji Tianqing was still standing where he was. He did not move an inch and was not injured at all. However, Tian's slaying was hit by the god-slaying spear. A bloody hole appeared in his left arm, and he let out a painful groan. He was sent flying for more than a dozen kilometers and fell at the end of the wasteland. He struggled to get up, his hair disheveled. He was in a sorry state. Damn bastard! How is this possible? How could he possibly hurt me? Tian Slaying's eyes were red with anger. He could not accept his failure as he growled in disbelief. When he looked up at Ji Tianqing again, his face was contorted. His expression was ferocious as he roared, "Everyone, attack together. Today, we will not stop until we tear him into pieces." Qin Haishan and the other 11 purple-robed experts immediately acknowledged the order. They did not care about their own injuries. They waved their swords and Dharma treasures wildly and released earth-shattering Dharma spells to attack Ji Tianqing from all directions. Swish, swish, swish. The earth-shattering Dharma spells lit up the entire wasteland. Violent and devastating magic power fluctuations surged in the wasteland. Ji Tianqing was surrounded, but he was calm. He made a spell with his left hand and held the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand. He started his counterattack. 7 stars sword. 5-colored divine thunder. He waved his sword with his right hand and shot out 49 rays of sword light to destroy the Dharma spells. He waved his left hand and shot out 5-colored lightning toward the purple-robed experts. Bang! 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 The attacks of the 11 purple-robed experts were all defeated on the spot. 4 of them were enveloped by the 5-colored lightning. With a series of crackling sounds, the 4 of them were scorched by the lightning. They twitched in pain. Such a tragic scene did not scare Qin Haishan and the others away. Instead, it aroused their ferocity. Qin Haishan roared. He held his broad sword with both hands and charged toward Ji Tianqing without caring about anything else. The purple-robed experts followed closely behind. They formed a battle formation and attacked Ji Tianqing from all sides. Ji Tianqing summoned a pair of mother-child shuttles. He cast a spell and activated the power of the shuttles to attack Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was fighting with Qin Haishan and the others. Suddenly, an extremely dangerous aura came from behind him. A wisp of cold silver light silently attacked and stabbed towards the back of his head. Whoosh! Ji Tianqing sensed the danger and immediately slashed behind him. Clang! The sound of metal clashing rang out. The sword of burial of heaven blocked the cold light accurately. The cold light was sent flying, but it split into 2 rays of cold light. A larger ray of cold light flew to the left. The smaller ray of cold light brushed past Ji Tianqing's arm and flew to the right. Instantly, the white robe on his arm was torn. A bloody mark was left on his skin, and a few drops of blood seeped out. Damn you, despicable person. Mother-child shuttles. Ji Tianqing looked down at his arm, then turned to look at Heaven Slaying and cursed coldly. Broken Moon Sword. He was completely enraged. Killing intent burst out of his body as he slashed at Qin Haishan and the others. With a loud boom, the three purple-robed experts were hit by the sword light and were cut in half. Ji Tianqing broke through the encirclement and charged at Heaven Slaying with his sword. Heaven Slaying also came forward, holding a crescent-shaped saber and fighting him head-on. The two figures immediately intertwined and clashed fiercely. Qin Haishan and the other purple-robed experts assisted Heaven Slaying in battle, occasionally releasing Dharma spells to attack. Everyone was fighting fiercely and used their full strength. No one noticed that in a corner of the wasteland. In the darkness, a pair of scarlet eyes were staring at the battle in the sky. Below it was the corpse of a purple-robed expert. It was already in tatters, and its flesh and blood had dried up. And this pitch-black monster's wrist was recovering at a visible rate, growing a pair of sharp claws. Soon, another purple-robed expert was knocked unconscious by Ji Tianqing and fell to the edge of the wasteland. The pitch-black monster hurriedly flew over, silently picked up the purple-robed expert, and hid in the darkness at the end of the wasteland. Chapter 1994. 15 minutes passed by very quickly. Ji Tianqing and Heavenly Slayer exchanged more than 1,000 moves before the victor was finally decided. Heavenly Slayer's crescent blade was already cut in two and fell into the wasteland. He was covered in blood all over, his grayish-white long robe also turned dark red. His head of long hair was disheveled, appearing very wretched. His four limbs, chest, and back were all covered in horrifying wounds, deep to the bone. His left leg, in particular, had been cut off from below the knee and was bleeding profusely. These were just physical injuries. Although they were serious, they were not fatal. What truly reduced his combat strength was the injuries to his divine soul. His divine soul suffered heavy injuries repeatedly, and his consciousness was already blurry. On the other hand, Ji Tianqing's situation was clearly much more relaxed. His long hair draped over his shoulders, his white robe was dyed with blood. Several wounds were left on his arms and chest. Apart from this, there were no other injuries on his body. His divine soul was still clear, his strength surging. During the process of the two people fighting, Qin Haishan and the purple-robed powerhouses surrounded and attacked Ji Tianqing without regard for their own safety. However, those purple-robed powerhouses were either injured by the aftershocks of the battle and blasted far away, or they were killed by Ji Tianqing, dying on the spot. Fighting until now, the 12 purple-robed powerhouses were all dead. Only Qin Haishan was still bitterly hanging on, fighting side by side with Heavenly Slayer. Qin Haishan's injuries were even more miserable. He was already a bloody man, his body contorted out of shape. He retreated to Heavenly Slayer's side and asked with a voice transmission while panting, "Lord Heavenly Slayer, what do we do now? This kid's strength far exceeds our imagination. Why don't we temporarily avoid the spearhead and have a decisive battle with him after our injuries are treated?" Very clearly, Qin Haishan already had thoughts of retreating and did not wish to continue fighting. He was very clear that he and Heavenly Slayer were not Ji Tianqing's match. Continuing to fight, he would die without a doubt. But he could not say escape directly and could only say it more tactfully. Heavenly Slayer naturally understood what he meant. Glaring at him with a belly full of anger, he scolded in a deep voice, "Qin Haishan, you blind bastard. After we leave the mystic realm, this seat will settle the score with you." Tian Shang didn't want to be entangled any further and wanted to escape from the divine pagoda as soon as possible. However, what angered him the most was that Qin Haishan had lied about military intelligence. It was because of Qin Haishan's report that he had misjudged Ji Tianqing's strength. That was why he had ended up in such a miserable state. He felt that he had been cheated by Qin Haishan, so of course he was full of resentment. Qin Haishan knew what Heavenly Slayer was thinking, but he couldn't voice his bitterness. He could only cup his hands and say respectfully, "Lord Tianshang, it's my fault. As long as I can leave this secret realm, I'm willing to accept any punishment." Tian Slayer looked at the Golden Crow ancient tomb not far away and instructed Qin Haishan, "Qin Haishan, you go entangle that kid and try your best to stall for time. I need to activate the array formation of the tomb before I can leave this place." Qin Haishan's expression immediately changed drastically, and he hurriedly shook his head and said, "Lord Heavenly Slayer, that won't do. This subordinate's strength is weak, how can I hold that brat back? In my opinion, only you, my lord, can hold that kid back. As long as you can stall for time, this subordinate can open the array formation." Qin Haishan was not stupid. He clearly knew that Tian Slayer wanted him to throw his life away, so how could he agree? Tian Slayer immediately glared at him and shouted sternly in a low voice, "Qin Haishan, this is my order. There's no room for negotiation. You actually dare to disobey? You know the consequences." As he said that, he emitted a cold killing intent all over his body, pressing towards Qin Haishan. Qin Haishan's body trembled, his expression becoming very ugly. His eyes also revealed a look of despair. He understood Tian Slayer's nature and methods. He was also a vicious and merciless character who killed without batting an eyelid. If he disobeyed, Tian Slayer would immediately execute the alliance rules and kill him on the spot. But if he obeyed, he would lose his life in Ji Tianqing's hands. It was death left and right. Qin Haishan weighed the pros and cons and simply steeled his heart, making up his mind. He looked at Tian Slayer with a determined gaze and said righteously, "Lord Tian Slayer, it's not that this subordinate is disobeying orders, but this is really inappropriate. I still think that the best decision is for you to stall for time while I activate the array." Obviously, Qin Haishan's fear of Ji Tianqing was far greater than his respect for Tian Slayer. He would rather suffer Tian Slayer's anger than fight with Ji Tianqing. Tian Slayer was so angry that his face turned pale. His eyes turned dark red like blood and his entire body was engulfed in raging flames. "Qin Haishan, you rebellious, disobedient, cowardly coward. I will kill you according to the alliance rules now." As he roared, Tian Slayer raised his right palm and accumulated a vast amount of dermic power. He was about to kill Qin Haishan with one strike. Qin Haishan hurriedly retreated and retorted mockingly, "I'm a coward? You're a patrol, a martial sage expert, but you don't dare to fight with a strong enemy. Instead, you want me to die. Ask yourself, who's the coward who's afraid of death?" Since they had already shed all pretenses of cordiality, Qin Haishan did not hide it anymore. He might as well make things clear and not give Tian Slayer any face. Tian Slayer flew into a rage out of humiliation. He was so furious that his entire body emitted a strong killing intent. "Qin Haishan, you traitor! I'll kill you now and clean up the mess." As soon as he finished speaking, Tian Slayer struck out with his right palm toward Qin Haishan. Qin Haishan was already prepared. He turned and fled without hesitation. Boom! A golden palm the size of a house streaked across the night sky and struck Qin Haishan. Qin Haishan's dermic power shield collapsed immediately. The jade pendant around his neck shattered with a bang. He was sent flying, blood spurting out of his mouth and nose. However, he managed to preserve his life with the protection of the jade pendant. After he landed, he hurriedly got up and continued flying toward the Golden Crow's ancient tomb. Tian Slayer chased after him with a murderous aura. He had only flown halfway when he was stopped by 2 rays of sword light. A mocking sneer sounded from the night sky beside him. "Huh, you can't beat me, so you're starting an internal conflict?" Tian Slayer turned his head and saw Ji Tianqing charging toward him with a sword in hand. His face was full of contempt. Tian Slayer was infuriated. He roared at the top of his lungs, "Little bastard, don't be so arrogant." As he spoke, he struck out with his fist toward the 2 rays of sword light. Bang! Bang! With 2 muffled explosions, the fist shadows collapsed. However, the sword light's power did not decrease. It continued to attack. Tian Slayer could only try his best to dodge. Swoosh! The sword light brushed past his shoulder and cut off his right palm. Ah! Tian Slayer let out a painful cry. The veins on his forehead bulged. At this moment, Ji Tianqing struck again with his sword and struck out a 5-colored lightning bolt. Tian Slayer did not have time to dodge at all. He was immediately struck by the 5-colored lightning bolt. Boom! Crack! With a thunderous boom, Heavenly Slayer's body exploded into charcoal fragments that filled the sky. Chapter 1995. A ball of white fog the size of a fist floated in the night sky. It was Tian Shang's soul. The life force of a martial saint was unimaginably strong. Ji Tianqing had exchanged over 1,000 blows with Tian Shang. He had used all his trump cards before he managed to destroy Tian Shang's physical body. Even though Tian Shang's soul was heavily injured, it was not so easy to kill him. Heaven-breaking sword. Ji Tianqing chased after him. He slashed out a huge golden sword towards Tian Shang's soul. Tian Shang suddenly woke up. He immediately turned into a ray of white light and fled into the distance. Whoosh! The huge golden sword chased after him. It cut through the dark night sky and only hit him when it reached the end of the wasteland. Boom! With a muffled sound, the sword light hit Tian Shang's soul. The ball of white fog distorted and flew thousands of feet away in the night sky. It then turned around and flew in the other direction. At the same time, the white fog released invisible soul ripples. They turned into 4 sharp spikes and attacked Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was already prepared. He activated his soul power and formed 4 sharp swords to fight back. Bang! 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 4 muffled sounds exploded in the soul. Tian Shang's soul attack was dispelled. He took the opportunity to flee 5 kilometers away. Ji Tianqing did not give up. He held the Burial of Heaven sword and chased after him. They chased each other in the night sky. In 15 minutes, they had circled the wasteland several times. Finally, Tian Shang's soul was too heavily injured. He could no longer bear the burden. When Ji Tianqing performed the soul-slashing sword technique and slashed out 18 sword lights, Tian Shang's soul was finally cut into pieces and scattered in the night sky. The inspector of the Heaven-Breaking Alliance, a martial saint expert, had died just like that. Ji Tianqing had created another miracle by killing a martial saint with his strength at the 8th stage of the tribulation passing realm. However, this miracle was only known to him and the Burial of Heaven. It was destined not to spread. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and shot out a beam of golden light, picking up Heavenly Slayer's soul fragment. The voice of the Burial of Heaven immediately sounded in his mind. The soul fragments of a martial saint expert are great nourishment. They can help me recover a lot of my strength. Ji Tianqing didn't hesitate and directly gave the divine soul fragment to the Burial of Heaven to devour. Then, he held the sword of Burial of Heaven and flew towards the Golden Crow tomb in the middle of the wasteland. At this moment, Qin Haishan was above the Golden Crow's tomb, casting his technique anxiously. After a full quarter of an hour, he still couldn't open the array even after using all his strength. Seeing Tian Shang being killed with his own eyes, he was so worried that his soul almost left his body. When he saw Ji Tianqing rushing over, he became even more flustered. His eyes were filled with despair. Shua! In the next moment, Ji Tianqing arrived behind Qin Haishan and stopped in the night sky. He looked at Qin Haishan expressionlessly and said coldly, "Qin Haishan, your death is here. There's no need to struggle anymore." Qin Haishan's body stiffened and his expression turned ashen. He was filled with despair, grief, and anger. He slowly turned to look at Ji Tianqing and shook his head. "Senior, you can't blame me for this. I respect you greatly and wouldn't dare to disobey you in the slightest. It's all Heavenly Slayer's fault. He wanted to kill you. I was ordered by him." Since Heavenly Slayer was already dead, Qin Haishan didn't hesitate to twist the truth to save his life. However, Ji Tianqing didn't believe his nonsense. He laughed coldly. "Huh, do you think I'll believe you? Do you think I'm a merciful person?" Qin Haishan was even more shocked and shocked. The despair in his heart was even greater. He was so anxious that his eyes darted around, anxiously thinking of a way to save his life. However, after racking his brain for a long time, he realized that he didn't have any life-saving trump cards. What was even more tragic was that he was about to die, but he didn't even know the other party's identity and background. Helpless, he could only bring up the heaven-shattering alliance. "Senior, don't forget that you're friends with our alliance master. As long as you spare my life, our alliance will definitely remember this kindness." Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile. He said disdainfully, "Now you admit that Wu Duantian and I are friends? That's not what you said before. You're just a small branch leader. Don't think too highly of yourself. Furthermore, I've never put the heaven-shattering alliance in my eyes. Wu Duantian isn't worthy of being my friend." Since he said that, Qin Haishan also understood that he was completely hopeless. His heart was like dead ashes. He glared at Ji Tianqing with a ferocious gaze and laughed maniacally. "Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha, kid, I admit that you're very strong, but you're too arrogant. Even if you don't put the heaven-shattering alliance in your eyes, you've killed me in Tian Shang. You'll have to suffer the heaven-shattering alliance's revenge. We've already sent out a message to inform the elders of the heaven-shattering alliance about you. Just you wait, the elders will avenge us very soon. You won't live long either. Soon, you'll be buried with us." Qin Haishan laughed maniacally. At the same time, he channeled all his magic power and soul to self-destruct. He was an expert at the 8th stage of the tribulation stage. Once he self-destructed, it would definitely destroy everything within a few hundred miles. The 3rd floor of the Divine Pagoda was only a few dozen miles in radius. Ji Tianqing had nowhere to hide. "Ha ha ha. Little bastard, let's die together." Qin Haishan laughed maniacally. His body ignited with 5-colored flames and expanded violently. Seeing that he was about to self-destruct, Ji Tianqing didn't retreat. Instead, he rushed forward like a stream of light. "Want to self-destruct in front of me? Too young." Ji Tianqing sneered disdainfully. He stretched out 2 fingers of his right hand and poked at Qin Haishan. Sky-piercing finger. The 2 fingertips emitted a dazzling golden light. It formed a sharp sword and instantly pierced Qin Haishan. Bang! The violently expanding Qin Haishan was like a balloon. He was instantly pierced by the sky-piercing finger. With a loud explosion, his body collapsed on the spot. It exploded into pieces and scattered in all directions. A violent 5-colored air wave wrapped around the pieces of flesh and swept across a few dozen miles. The hurricane filled the entire wasteland. It blew up gravel and dust. Qin Haishan's physical body and soul were completely destroyed. They turned into fine powder and scattered in the wasteland. Although he still exploded, it wasn't a self-destruction. The power was completely different. Ji Tianqing was swept by the shockwave. He was also unharmed. When the violent hurricane calmed down, the entire wasteland regained its peace. Originally, Ji Tianqing should have sat down and adjusted his breathing after killing all the people of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance. However, he didn't stop. He turned and flew to a corner of the wasteland. He shouted with a cold expression. "Ji Xiaolua, you coward! How long are you going to hide?" He stared at the corner of the wasteland with a sharp gaze. His body was filled with a strong murderous intent. In the corner of the wasteland, there was a pile of broken bones. The ground was stained with blood. Chapter 1996. This pitch-black monster covered in scales was Ji Xiaolua. It had been hiding in the rubble for a long time and witnessed the battle between Ji Tianqing and Tian Chang and the others. Beneath it, the ground was littered with bones and chunks of flesh, enough to form 7 corpses. Without a doubt, 7 of the 12 elites of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance had been killed by it. The souls and blood essences of these 7 experts were also completely devoured by it. A pair of sharp claws grew out of its broken wrist. They were as black and sharp as before. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, Ji Xiaolua's eyes were filled with murderous intent. It stopped hiding its aura and crawled out from the rubble. Whoosh! With a flash of blood, Ji Xiaolua flew into the night sky and stood 5 kilometers away from Ji Tianqing. It stared at Ji Tianqing ferociously and sneered, "Ha, I didn't think that not only did you chase me here, you even discovered me long ago. However, this is the worst decision you've made in your life, and you're about to regret it." Ji Tianqing curled his lips and sneered disdainfully, "You're the one who's going to regret it. The stupidest decision you've made in your life was to enter this divine tower. Because this is where you're going to be buried." Ji Xiaolua stood proudly and exuded a powerful and domineering aura. "Ha ha ha. What a joke. Ji Tianqing, with your current state, how could you have the courage to speak such nonsense? You fought with the Heaven-Shattering Alliance's martial saint and are heavily injured, and your strength has dropped by half. Meanwhile, I've recovered 80% of my strength, so killing you is as easy as pie." Ji Tianqing disdained to argue with it. With his left hand behind his back and his right hand holding the burial of heaven, he pointed it at the ground and said proudly, "Ji Xiaolua, there's no point in talking anymore. Hand over your life." As soon as he finished speaking, he channeled his vast magic power and released a vast amount of divine lightning, slashing with all his might. The path of martial arts is endless, but the path of the sword is eternal. With just one sword, I defeated all the geniuses of the myriad worlds and killed all those who betrayed me. My sword can split the heavens and earth, change the sun and moon, and kill the gods. Godslayer sword. Even though Ji Tianqing had fought a great battle, his mana was still vigorous and his battle prowess was outstanding. He was full of vigor as he spoke these overbearing words in a clear and loud voice. Every time he spoke, his aura would double, and his sword intent would become more condensed. When the words "God-slaying sword" came out of his mouth, his aura reached its peak, and his sword intent took form. The sword of burial of heaven slashed out a 1,000-meter-long giant sword with dazzling white light. Along with a sky full of sword shadows, it slashed down from the sky towards Ji Xiaolua. This sword technique was the 8th move of the burial of heaven's 9 swords, God-slaying sword. And the sky full of golden and red sword shadows was Ji Tianqing's sword intent. It represented absolute majesty and dominance, as well as the courage to press forward with indomitable will. Today, Ji Tianqing had finally mastered the sword intent that he had comprehended for many years. Swoosh! The god-slaying sword fell from the sky, and the wilderness was in chaos. The ground cracked, and dust flew up into the sky. Ji Xiaolua endured the suppression of the sword intent. His body trembled violently, and his face was distorted. He immediately widened his eyes, revealing a look of horror. He exclaimed in disbelief, "Sword intent. The fusion of will and sword technique. Only a sword sage can master sword intent. You're so young. How could you have comprehended such a powerful sword intent? You and that person from 1,000 years ago." Seeing Ji Tianqing in high spirits and the god-slaying sword's invincible power, Ji Xiaolua immediately thought of that sword Dao legend from 1,000 years ago. Ji Xiaolua had never seen that sword Dao legend with his own eyes. But he was sure that the sword Dao legend from back then was nothing more than this. At this critical moment, Ji Xiaolua did not dare to think too deeply. He hurriedly used a secret technique to block the power of the god-slaying sword. Heavenly demon protection. He shouted in a low voice. His claws formed a strange posture, and his body surged with demonic aura. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, a pitch-black shield formed and protected him. The shield flashed with a cold light, and 6 ferocious heavenly demon shadows flashed. This was the demon race's saint-level secret technique, one of their strongest defensive techniques. In the next moment, the god-slaying sword fell from the sky and struck the black shield. Bam! With a deafening sound, the black shield collapsed on the spot, and more than 10 cracks appeared. Crack! The black shield could not withstand the destructive blow. It shattered into billowing black fog and scattered in the wilderness. Ji Xiaolua was also cut down. He fell from the sky and crashed into the wilderness, creating a huge crater in the ground and sending countless rocks flying. He struggled for a while, but before he could get up, he opened his mouth and spat out black blood, mixed with countless pieces of his internal organs. Clearly, the god-slaying sword's tyrannical slash through the shield caused him to suffer a backlash. His internal organs and blood vessels were shattered inch by inch. From his chest and abdomen, he felt as if he was being stabbed by knives and needles. Ji Xiaolua's body bent over as he let out a painful groan. He hurriedly circulated his energy to suppress his injuries. He flapped his wings and flew out of the crater. However, before he could fly back into the night sky, Ji Tianqing descended from the sky and attacked again. White Tiger Sacred Sword. The Sword of Burial of Heaven became a giant sword thousands of feet tall. Ji Tianqing's body also surged with golden light, and he became one with the giant sword. The giant sword fell from the sky, bringing with it the image of a white tiger as huge as a mountain. It came crashing down like a meteor. Ji Xiaolua looked up at the sky and saw the white tiger sacred sword coming down. It was too late for him to dodge. His scarlet eyes were filled with anger and unwillingness. At the critical moment of life and death, he could only fold his black wings to protect his vitals. Boom! Crack! In the next moment, the white tiger sacred sword struck him, and a thunderous sound rang out. Golden light burst forth, and black fog drifted away. Another crater with a radius of more than 10 miles appeared in the wilderness. Dust flew everywhere. Ji Xiaolua's black wings were cut off on the spot. They shattered into several pieces and scattered in the crater. It had become a naked black monster, covered in wounds and blood, roaring furiously. Ji Tianqing did not stop. He took advantage of the situation and launched a fierce attack. He used all his strength to use his ultimate techniques, wanting to kill Ji Xiaolua. Vermilion Bird Sacred Sword. Azure Dragon Sacred Sword. Heaven-Splitting Sword. 5-Colored Divine Lightning. The two of them fought fiercely in the wilderness. It was an extremely fierce battle. Ji Tianqing constantly let out low roars and used all kinds of trump cards. Ji Xiaolua was beaten back again and again. He had no strength to fight back, and his injuries became more and more serious. After the two of them exchanged 200 blows, Ji Xiaolua's body was already distorted and on the verge of collapse. He collapsed weakly in the ruins, twitching violently. His body was covered in black demonic fog. Ji Tianqing descended from the sky. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed down fiercely. Ji Xiaolua was about to be killed on the spot. At this critical moment, he did not dodge or counterattack. He was exceptionally calm. Chapter 1997. Heavenly Demon Jade Seed? Ji Tianqing was stunned. The sword of burial of heaven in his hands froze in midair. He looked at Ji Xiaolua with a gloomy expression. His eyes were as sharp as a sword, as if he wanted to see through him. Ji Xiaolua, did the ancestor Fiend Celestial impart the heavenly demon jade seed technique to you? Ji Xiaolua sneered and said proudly, not only me, every great demon saint has received the ancestor Fiend Celestial's impartation. Ha ha ha. I am not the patrol envoy of the Broken Sky Alliance. I am not as stupid and weak as him. You can kill him, but you can't kill me. Ji Tianqing was silent. He stared at Ji Xiaolua with a murderous look and frowned. 1,000 years ago, he had heard of the heavenly demon jade seed technique and had even come into contact with it. He had a certain understanding of this powerful demon Dao secret technique. This kind of secret technique had many effects, but the two most prominent effects were something that the other clan's secret techniques could not compare to. One was to steal the cultivation of others, and the other was to bring the dead back to life. The ancestor Fiend Celestial had planted the heavenly demon seed in the divine souls of the great demon saints, creating a mysterious connection between them. Those great demon saints had become the seeds cultivated by the ancestor Fiend Celestial. Once a great demon saint died, the ancestor Fiend Celestial would obtain part of his cultivation, greatly increasing his power. Or, when the ancestor Fiend Celestial needed it, he could use the secret technique to steal the cultivation of the great demon saints. Ji Tianqing had read in a book that in ancient times, there was a great demon king who had been stuck in the martial god realm. No matter how hard he cultivated, he could not break through to the true god realm and wasted more than 2,000 years. Later, the great demon king picked 99 talented geniuses and took them in as his disciples. He used the heavenly demon jade seed technique to plant the heavenly demon seed in the bodies of the 99 disciples. 1,000 years later, the 99 disciples had become talents. Most of them had reached the martial saint realm, and only a few of them had remained in the tribulation realm. Thus, the great demon king used a secret technique to steal the cultivation of the disciples. It succeeded as expected, breaking through to the true God realm very quickly. The 99 disciples were all drained of their power and cultivation, suffering heavy casualties. This was one of the effects of the heavenly demon jade seed technique. It was very strange and overbearing. In addition, since Ji Xiaolua had practiced the heavenly devil jade seed technique, he must have left a spiritual soul seed in his lair in the North Underworld mountain. Even if it was accidentally killed by a strong enemy while fighting outside. The soul seed it had left in the North Underworld mountain would be awakened immediately. It would heal its wounds and recover its strength quickly. Soon, it would be reborn again. This was equivalent to Ji Xiaolua having an extra life. It was precisely because of this that Ji Xiaolua was fearless. As long as Ji Tianqing dared to kill it, it could come back to life. Furthermore, the ancestor demonic god would also obtain a portion of his cultivation, allowing his power to rapidly increase. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing was a little hesitant. His face was gloomy as he pondered. To kill or not to kill, this was a problem. Ji Xiaolua crawled up from the ground and silently circulated his power to suppress his injuries. He looked up at Ji Tianqing and sneered, "Ji Tianqing, I believe you are very clear about the effects and power of the heavenly devil jade seed technique. Killing them all will not do you any good. If you are smart enough, you will know what to do." Ji Xiaolua's tone revealed that he had a card up his sleeve. Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows and stared at him coldly. He shouted in a low voice, "Ji Xiaolua, it is too early for you to be happy. Even if you have practiced the heavenly devil jade seed technique, I will still kill you. Not only you, I will also kill all the devil saints and cut off the ancestor demonic god's wings before killing it." After saying this, Ji Tianqing held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed down with all his strength. Heaven-splitting sword. Vast and mighty mana gushed out from the sword of burial of heaven and formed a giant golden sword 100 feet long. The golden sword fell from the sky. Ji Xiaolua was unable to dodge and was immediately drowned by the golden light. Kaboom! A thunderous explosion resounded through the sky. The wasteland within a radius of dozens of miles was shaken by the giant sword's bombardment. A huge gully was cut in the ground and countless cracks appeared in the surroundings. Endless dust and gravel floated in the air, covering the sky and the sun. Ji Xiaolua's body was cut in half by the sword light on the spot. It shattered into countless pieces and scattered among the ruins. A dark purple ball of light flew out from the pieces of flesh. That was Ji Xiaolua's soul, which had already been severely injured. Bang! The dark purple ball of light exploded and turned into a sky full of purple flames, illuminating the wasteland. The dazzling purple soul fire only lasted for a few breaths before it quickly dissipated. The wasteland gradually regained its tranquility and the dust in the sky slowly settled down. Everything was over. Ji Xiaolua had been killed by Ji Tianqing, but he was not truly dead. The ancestor demon god would obtain part of his cultivation and the spiritual seed that he had left in North Underworld Mountain would be reborn soon. Ji Tianqing knew that this would be the result, but he did not regret it. At least, Ji Xiaolua's spiritual seed would not be reborn in a short period of time. In the next 10 years, it would not be able to recover to the martial sage realm and would not be able to cause trouble again. When the wasteland regained its tranquility, Ji Tianqing's figure appeared. He flew back to the middle of the wasteland and landed on the Golden Crow ancient tomb. Staring at the ancient tomb beneath his feet, he muttered to himself, "Back then, Yang Tian obtained half of the sun-devouring divine skill from the ancient tomb and devoured the power of millions of sea beasts. It's a pity that he only obtained half of the divine skill. If he had cultivated the complete divine skill, he might have successfully broken through to the martial god realm. The other half of the divine skill is most likely still in this ancient tomb." Previously, he had sensed that there was a powerful divine power in the depths of the ancient tomb that seemed to be protecting and sealing something. He guessed that the other half of the sun-devouring divine skill was most likely hidden in that divine power. However, his strength was not enough to break through that divine power. He could only wait until he was strong enough to explore the mysteries of the ancient tomb. Then, he activated the array in the ancient tomb and opened the passage to the next level. Swoosh! With a flash of light, he left the third level and entered the fourth level of the divine pagoda. Around him was the vast divine sea. The surface of the sea was blue, calm and still. Ji Tianqing flew across the surface of the sea at lightning speed and rushed to the eye of the sea in the depths of the divine sea. Half a day later, he passed through the eye of the sea and returned to the fifth level of the divine pagoda. The spacious and bright hall was as calm and cold as ever. On the large altar, 18 demon god statues stood quietly, surrounding the origin divine array. Ji Tianqing flew to the top of the altar and sat in the middle of the origin divine array. He began to cultivate. The continuous battles had caused him serious injuries and consumed a lot of his magic power. He had to rest for an entire day to recover to his peak condition. Chapter 1998. Ji Tianqing had used the divine blood control spirit art to establish a connection with the origin divine formation. He could communicate with the divine formation and use the origin divine gate to enter the first 4 floors of the divine pagoda. But he had yet to fully grasp the origin divine formation, so he couldn't control the target and accurately enter a floor. Thus, he continued to communicate with the origin divine formation and focused on unraveling its secrets. The hall was quiet as time quietly passed. 5 days passed without him noticing. Ji Tianqing gradually used the divine blood control spirit art to strengthen his connection with the origin divine formation. At the same time, his control over the origin divine formation had also improved to a more precise level. He had already accurately found the path to the first 4 floors from the many passages of the origin divine gate. As long as he activated the formation, he could accurately reach the first 4 floors of the divine pagoda. This was already an enormous improvement. But he still felt that he was missing something. There were even deeper secrets within the origin divine formation that were waiting for him to unearth. Thus, he continued to probe the secrets of the origin divine formation. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, another 10 days passed. Ji Tianqing's spiritual sense had already entered the depths of the origin divine formation and probed the secrets of the core region of the formation. To his surprise, he discovered a ball of divine golden light in the depths of the formation. Within this golden light was a golden pagoda the size of a fist. This small golden pagoda was extremely intricate and lifelike, so exquisite that it was breathtaking. Upon closer inspection, Ji Tianqing discovered that this small pagoda was identical to the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda, without the slightest difference. This discovery jolted him to his senses and filled him with anticipation. Just like the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda, this exquisite small pagoda is hidden in the depths of the origin divine formation. Could this small pagoda be the core that controls the divine pagoda, the key to opening the divine pagoda? As this thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind, he impatiently sent out his spiritual sense to communicate with the small pagoda. The small golden pagoda was divine and dignified, exuding boundless divine might. Ji Tianqing's spiritual sense found it difficult to approach, and only after many attempts did he manage to make contact with it. He was not in a hurry, and patiently communicated with small pagoda, using his divine sense to nurture it. Half a month later, small tower finally accepted his divine sense and allowed him to enter. The first step of refining the small pagoda was a success. Ji Tianqing was in high spirits. He continued to control his divine sense and focused on refining the small tower. He was immersed in casting the spell and completely forgot about the passage of time. Soon, another month had passed. He had finally succeeded in refining the golden pagoda. Buzz! His divine sense fused with small pagoda, and small pagoda immediately released an even more resplendent golden light. The next moment, the small golden pagoda flew out from the depths of the formation under the guidance of his divine sense. Shwa! The golden pagoda flew out of the origin divine formation and landed in his palm. He looked down and saw a small golden pagoda that was 3 inches tall floating above his palm, flashing with a brilliant golden light. A sacred and mighty aura was released from the small pagoda. Ji Tianqing loved it so much that he couldn't put it down. He held the small golden pagoda and observed it for a long time before putting it away. Small pagoda drilled into his palm, entered his head, and finally landed in his sea of consciousness. In his sea of consciousness, a blazing white heaven-mending orb floated above. It was like a full moon, sacred and dignified. The small golden pagoda floated below the heaven-mending orb, quietly sleeping. The two coexisted peacefully without any conflict. They could both provide Ji Tianqing with powerful strength. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing was relieved. He circulated his energy for 2 days and recovered to his peak state. Then, he prepared to leave the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda. Thus, he took out the small golden pagoda and used his divine sense to communicate with it. Shua. Small pagoda released a resplendent golden light that condensed into a door of light in front of him. He stepped into the door of light and immediately disappeared. The next moment, he appeared on the summit of a 2,000-foot-tall mountain. It was late at night. In the gloomy night sky, a crescent moon was hanging, and there were sparse stars. Beneath his feet was a ruined ground, and around him was a messy forest. A cold wind blew across the mountain peak, sweeping up the sand on the ground. Ji Tianqing looked around and realized that he had left the Yin-Yang secret realm. The mountain peak beneath his feet was the entrance to the Yin-Yang secret realm. There was originally a golden and blue door of light on the mountain peak, which was protected by a large array set up by the Broken Sky Alliance. But now, the dual-colored door of light and the defensive array were long gone. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and scanned the surrounding 500 miles. However, it was quiet within 500 miles, and there was no aura of martial artists. Strange. When I came here before, there were more than 20 martial artists gathered here. It's only been 2 months, why is everyone gone? Ji Tianqing murmured to himself, feeling a little puzzled. However, he guessed the reason after thinking for a while. The Broken Sky Alliance occupied the entrance to the secret realm, and the other forces were not qualified to fight for it. Later, Ji Xiaolua and the demon race experts arrived and killed all the Broken Sky Alliance's experts, intimidating the other forces' experts. Those experts could have fantasies about the Heaven-Shattering Alliance because the Heaven-Shattering Alliance was a human force, so they still had some feelings and humanity. However, the demon race of the North Underworld Mountain was scarier than any other race. Who dared to fantasize about the demon race, unless they were tired of living? In addition, the door of light at the entrance to the secret realm had disappeared. Even if the other forces had the guts to fight with the Broken Sky Alliance and the demon race, they would not be able to enter the secret realm. Just as Ji Tianqing was thinking, a purple light flew from the night sky and landed in his hand. Whoosh! After the purple light disappeared, it was a communication jade slip the size of a finger. Ji Tianqing immediately knew that it was a message from Ji Ku. Thus, he released his divine sense and read the message in the jade slip. Ji Ku's clear and melodious voice immediately sounded in his mind. Big brother Tianqing, we have been hiding nearby for 2 months, and Ji Xiaolua has not returned. Did you fight with Ji Xiaolua in the secret realm? Are you injured? Is Ji Xiaolua still alive? If Ji Xiaolua is dead, hurry over here as soon as possible. I am near the 2 Divergent Mountain, and there are more than 30 demon elites here, you can catch them all in one fell swoop. The message in the jade slip was not much, but it was very important. After Ji Tianqing heard it, he frowned and pondered for a moment before sending a message back to Ji Ku. Ku, Ji Xiaolua and the demon race experts under him were all killed by me. However, the ancestral fiend god taught Ji Xiaolua a secret technique called the Great Heavenly Demon Seed Jade Technique, which can bring him back to life. Ji Xiaolua left a soul seed in the North Underworld Mountain, and he should be able to return to his peak in 10 years. As for the 2 Divergent Mountain, I will not go there. I can't kill those 30 or so demon clan elites, so I can only spare their lives. Chapter 1999. After sending a message to Ji Ku, Ji Tianqing waited for half an hour. Then, Ji Ku sent him a message. When Ji Ku learned that Ji Xiaolua had been killed and all the demon experts had died, he was very excited. As for the demon elites of Dual Qi Mountain, they could only count themselves lucky and managed to keep their lives. She was going to follow the demon elites back to the North Underworld mountain. She would only contact Ji Tianqing if there was any situation or major event in the future. After Ji Tianqing finished reading the message in the jade slip, he silently put it away and didn't reply to the message. He sighed with mixed feelings and turned around to leave. He flew across the sky like a shooting star and headed south. The matter of the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Pagoda had come to an end. When he was strong enough, he would come back to explore the secrets of the Divine Pagoda. After all, he had the secret key to the Divine Pagoda and could enter and exit the Divine Pagoda at any time. Other than him, no one else could enter the Divine Pagoda, not even martial saints. After all, the entrance to the Yin-Yang realm had disappeared. Ji Tianqing crossed the fallen blood lake and was flying over the mountains. Early in the morning, the sun had just risen. When he was flying over a vast mountain range, he suddenly stopped. Swoosh! He landed on the peak of a 1,000-foot-tall mountain and stood on a millstone-sized rock on the mountain peak. Damn it, I actually forgot about this. He looked up at the sky and muttered with a strange expression. In the originally clear sky, there was suddenly a gust of wind. Endless gray clouds gathered from all directions and gathered in the sky above the mountain. In just 100 breaths of time, the gray clouds turned into pitch-black tribulation clouds. They rolled rapidly and were about to condense into a vortex. The world was dark and the air was filled with an extremely oppressive aura. Within 100 miles, all the birds and beasts living in the forest were scared out of their wits and fled into the distance. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing's heavenly tribulation was about to descend. He looked up at the tribulation clouds with a calm expression and said in a playful tone, "I've long reached the 8th stage of the tribulation transcendence realm. Previously, I stayed in the 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda and never sensed the heavenly tribulation." Now that he had just left the divine pagoda, less than 24 hours later, the heavenly tribulation arrived as promised. It seems that I can't avoid even one of the heavenly tribulations that I have to face. The burial of heaven's voice rang out in his mind. Its tone was solemn as it said, as long as it is a world covered by the heavenly Tao, no matter where it is in the universe, it must follow the heavenly Tao's rules. The facts have proven that your guess was correct. The 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda can indeed cut off the will of the heavenly Tao and isolate the senses of the heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Only a top king-grade divine artifact can achieve such an effect. It's just like the backup plan I left behind all those years ago. Only by exhausting all my divine power and might could I disrupt the heavenly secrets and leave behind memories of my soul during the heavenly tribulation." Just as he was discussing with the burial of heaven, the vortex of tribulation clouds high in the sky had already formed. In the pitch-black vortex of tribulation clouds, there were colorful lightning arcs flashing, releasing a terrifying heavenly Tao's pressure that enveloped an area of 100 miles. Ji Tianqing endured the heavenly Tao's pressure, but he could still maintain his calm and his body was still upright. Not long after, the heavenly tribulation arrived. Kaboom! Following the deafening sound of thunder, 6 lightning bolts struck down from the vortex of tribulation clouds. 6 lightning pillars that were hundreds of feet long, carrying a divine power that could destroy everything, fell from the sky and struck down at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was fearless. With his left hand behind his back, he waved his right hand and struck out with a golden light that filled the sky, forming a huge vortex. The vortex that was thousands of feet in radius blocked above his head, releasing an incomparably powerful suction force. Bam bam bam. A series of muffled sounds burst out. The 6 lightning bolts blasted into the vortex and were quickly swallowed up. The first lightning bolt was easily neutralized by Ji Tianqing just like that. Next, the second lightning bolt came one after another. This time, 12 lightning pillars blasted down from the vortex of tribulation clouds. The power was more than 3 times stronger than before. Boom, 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 boom. Another earth-shattering sound burst out, resounding through the universe. Ji Tianqing struck out with a golden light again, forming a vortex and swallowing the 12 lightning bolts. The third lightning bolt had reached 24 bolts, and its power was even more terrifying. However, the result was still the same. Ji Tianqing still swallowed all the lightning bolts. After the third lightning bolt, the vortex of tribulation clouds changed. Not long after, the vortex of tribulation clouds changed, and even more powerful lightning bolts descended. When the fourth lightning bolt descended, a total of 48 five-colored lightning pillars were arranged into a divine formation of heaven and earth, ruthlessly bombarding Ji Tianqing. Each lightning pillar contained the power of 5 types of divine lightning, and its power was immeasurable. The 48 lightning pillars were arranged in a divine formation, containing supreme divine power that could destroy heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing calmly dealt with it. Holding the sword of burial of heaven, he instantly stabbed out 49 sword lights to meet the lightning bolts in the sky. Bang, 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 bang. A series of loud noises, like firecrackers, resounded through the clouds. The 48 lightning pillars were all destroyed by the sword lights, turning into billions of lightning arcs that scattered between heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing was not injured at all. The 1,000-foot-tall mountain under his feet and the surrounding mountains were smashed into pieces by the lightning bolts, collapsing into charred ruins. The violent shock waves wreaked havoc, blowing up sand and dust that filled the sky for hundreds of miles. The fifth and sixth lightning bolts that followed doubled in number, reaching 96 and 192 bolts, and their power was also extremely terrifying. This was definitely an unprecedented heavenly tribulation. If it was any other expert that witnessed this scene with their own eyes, they would be shocked to the point of being absent-minded and terrified to the extreme. Even a martial sage expert would not dare to withstand such a terrifying heavenly tribulation, and be killed by 192 bolts of lightning. The only outcome would be death and disintegration. However, Ji Tianqing did it, continuously creating miracles. With his strong body and marvelous sword techniques, he destroyed the lightning bolts that filled the sky and blocked the power of the lightning bolts. After the sixth lightning bolt, the tribulation cloud vortex changed again, turning into a blood-red color. The seventh lightning bolt was still the inner demon tribulation. Ji Tianqing looked up at the sky, watching the blood-red lightning bolt from the dark red tribulation cloud. He did not dodge, calmly accepting the attack of the blood-red lightning bolt. Soon, he was enveloped by a huge ball of blood-red light, entering the illusion of the inner demon tribulation. He had already gone through several inner demon tribulations, and had sufficient experience. Although the inner demon tribulation this time was as dangerous as before, he successfully resolved it. As for the eighth tribulation of wind and fire, it was not a problem for him. The heavenly wind fire and the mysterious black fire that burned his body were also used by him to temper his body. Finally, the last lightning bolt descended. A very strange lightning bolt struck down from the tribulation cloud vortex that was hundreds of miles wide. Chapter 2000. Ji Tianqing was knowledgeable and knowledgeable. He had seen gold, purple, blue, red, and black lightning. Only the white lightning was something he had never seen before. However, the lightning pillar contained both black and white, which immediately made him understand the power of yin and yang. This is the yin-yang tribulation. As expected, the lightning pillar that was hundreds of meters long immediately turned into a ball of black and white light after hitting Ji Tianqing. The black and white light within a radius of 5 kilometers turned into a huge disk that drowned Ji Tianqing's figure. The appearance of this disk was rather mysterious and contained the profundity of the Great Tao. The disk was half black and half white, and it was formed by a black and white yin-yang fish with their heads and tails intertwined. It was the Taiji diagram that represented yin and yang. Ji Tianqing was in the black and white formation. He had already entered another space and was undergoing a test. This was an alternate space with a radius of 50 kilometers. It was filled with black and white, and it looked extremely simple. However, there was no spiritual energy in the entire space, only the endless power of yin and yang. Ji Tianqing stood in midair and endured a powerful suppressive force. The power of yin and yang formed invisible blades that constantly strangled him. The attribute of the power was unpredictable. Sometimes it was as hot as the sun, and sometimes it was as cold as ice. No matter how strong his physical defense was, he had to resist with all his strength to protect himself. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Ji Tianqing stood in the black and white torrent, circulating his energy to resist the impact of the power of yin and yang. He had no time to care about anything else. He had consumed a lot of his magic power, and his mind was somewhat tired. However, the black and white torrent was endless and never stopped. Its power did not weaken at all. Ji Tianqing knew that he could not continue like this. When his power was exhausted, the power of yin and yang would multiply endlessly. If he did not find a way to resolve this yin-yang tribulation and leave this black and white space, he would definitely be trapped here until he died. Therefore, he flew forward with all his might, trying to find the end of the black and white space. However, he soon discovered that after passing through the black light area, he would enter the white light area. After passing through the white light area, he would enter the black light area. Even if he flew for tens of thousands of miles, he still couldn't find the end. It seems that only by grasping the power of yin and yang can I leave this space and resolve this calamity. Ji Tianqing murmured in a low voice. Then, he sat cross-legged in the black and white space and began to cast a spell. He did not release his magic power to form a shield to protect himself. His entire body was dim, and his expression was calm as usual. It was as if he was calmly enduring the power of yin and yang. More than 1,000 years ago, when he had broken through to the martial sage realm, he had already seen through yin and yang and mastered the power of yin and yang. He had a deep understanding of the Tao of yin and yang. What is yin and yang? The sun was yang, and the moon was yin. The male is yang, while the female is yin. Life is yang, death is yin, right is yang, reverse is yin, fire is yang, water is yin. There were too many things like this to count. In short, everything in the world has two sides, good and evil, good and bad, positive and negative. As the saying goes, when things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. Yin and yang generally referred to two opposing but interrelated forces. The two complemented each other, promoting and restraining each other, but they could reach a level of endless growth. This was similar to the generation and restraint of the five elements. Of course, the Tao of yin and yang was called the Tao. First, there was the Tao of yin and yang, then there was the Tao of the five elements. Ji Tianqing's understanding of the world's origin and the universe had reached an extremely deep level. He quickly entered a state of cultivation and immersed himself in the power of yin and yang. His entire body was wrapped in black and white brilliance. If the black and white brilliance was a torrent, then he was a fish swimming freely in the torrent, unrestrained and free. He understood the principles of yin and yang and mastered the Tao of yin and yang. How could the black and white brilliance hurt him? Time passed silently. Ji Tianqing was immersed in cultivation. After 3 days, he had completely mastered the Tao of yin and yang and could control the mysterious power of yin and yang. Then, he began to resolve the yin-yang tribulation. He stood in the black and white torrent and stretched out his left and right palms. He made a mysterious hand seal and formed a series of hand seals. Suddenly, the black and white brilliance around him separated. The black and white separated and became distinct, gradually forming a special pattern. The process was very slow, but Ji Tianqing was very patient, as if he did not know fatigue. An entire day passed. In the space within 100 miles, the black and white brilliance had completely separated. A Tai Chi diagram formed by the yin-yang fish was finally formed. This undoubtedly meant that Ji Tianqing had truly mastered the Tao of yin and yang. Swoosh! After the yin-yang diagram was formed, it immediately spun faster. Then, the diagram quickly shrank and turned into a black and white pillar of light that surged into Ji Tianqing's body. That was the majestic power of yin and yang. It was all injected into his body to increase his strength. Ji Tianqing closed his eyes and calmly accepted the gift of the heavenly Tao. This was his reward for resolving the yin-yang tribulation. After 2 hours, the endless power of yin and yang was completely devoured by him. Swoosh! A light flashed before his eyes, and he returned to the sky. Beneath his feet was a ruin with a radius of 100 miles, surrounded by vast mountains. Above his head was the huge tribulation cloud vortex, and it was still gradually dissipating. Ji Tianqing had finally transcended the 6th tribulation. After the tribulation cloud vortex dissipated, it turned into a wisp of sacred golden light and surged into Ji Tianqing's body. This was the reward bestowed by the heavenly Tao after successfully transcending the tribulation. Ji Tianqing bathed in the sacred golden light, and his soul and body were baptized and strengthened. His strength was also rapidly increasing. After transcending this tribulation, his strength had increased by 4 times, and his combat strength was even more powerful. Fortunately, this is the ruins of God, and there's no one within a radius of tens of thousands of miles. No one should have seen me transcending the tribulation here, right? Ji Tianqing looked around and saw that there was nothing unusual around him, so he turned around and flew away. He continued to fly south, preparing to return to Heavenly Pillar Mountain. However, something that made him very embarrassed happened. He had just transcended the 6th tribulation when he sensed something in his mind again. The will of the heavenly Tao descended. His 7th tribulation would descend this evening. Ji Tianqing did not know whether to laugh or cry at this result. I've just transcended the tribulation, and it's coming again? Transcending the tribulation twice in a row? Is there such a thing in this world? I should have transcended the 3rd tribulation, but the heavenly Tao's detection was blocked by the 9 heavens 10 absolutes tower. Now that I've left the tower, the tribulation is coming all at once. If it were anyone else, they would definitely die and turn into ashes under the tribulation. He muttered in his heart, but he was not worried and continued to travel high in the sky. A few hours later, it was evening. At this moment, Ji Tianqing was speeding high in the sky, flying over a vast mountain range. Sensing that the tribulation was coming, he hurriedly stopped above a large lake and prepared to transcend the tribulation. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.